Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 61. Lu Yin didn't say a word from start to finish. There was no point in saying anything at this point. The universe was a place where the strong preyed on the weak, and any words of indignation would only make him a laughingstock. It was a pity that he hadn't been able to kill Lu Xiaoge. That person was a hidden danger. Lu Xiaoge. Bai Shui shouted in anger, her eyes bloodshot. Lu Xiaoge smiled faintly at her but didn't say anything. Qingyu glanced at Bai Shui. I forgot about her. Remember to bring her along the next time you come. She has an innate gift of ice and she's so pretty. Only someone like her is suitable to serve me. A cold glint flashed through Lu Xiaoge's eyes, but he quickly recovered and bowed. Yes, young master. Soon Qingyu and Lu Xiaoge disappeared. Then a silver spaceship rose from the huge spaceship and flew into the universe. Within the huge spacecraft, Myra's eyes narrowed. A new Night King has actually been born. What a troublesome clan. Just as everyone looked up to watch Qingyu disappear, Lu Yin suddenly took control of Hua Xiaoling and Jenny Anna. This scene stunned everyone including Sigmund and the rest. Native, how dare you? Let go of me. Raged Tori Anna. He had been too careless for something like this to happen right under his nose. Shalash was shocked. He hadn't expected a puny sentinel to dare grab Hua Xiaoling and Jenny Anna right in front of space-exploring powerhouses. Even he admired the kid's guts. Sigmund stared at Lu Yin coldly. Do you know what you're doing? Lu Yin grabbed Hua Xiaoling and Jenny Anna in each hand, a dagger in each hand that he could stab into their necks with just a bit of force. Sorry, it's not good to use women to threaten others, but they're the most important people here, so this is the only way. General Mathers, right? I wish to speak with you. Sigmund was furious. He was actually being threatened by a native. Given his character, he would rather sacrifice two people than be blackmailed. But Lu Yin was using Hua Xiaoling and Jenny Anna to threaten him. If they died because of him, he wouldn't have much of a good ending. What do you want to talk about? Lu Yin hid behind the two girls and calmly said, after the trial, Earth's cultivators will be sent to the battlefield by you, right? I don't want that to happen. Can I ask General Mando for help? These are the rules of the Empire and I have no right to change them. Lu Yin smiled. Qingyu just said that he will personally descend to destroy Earth. You can use this as an excuse to reply to the Great Yu Empire. If I'm not mistaken, there shouldn't be anyone in the Great Yu Empire who dares to go against the Night King clan's orders. Sigmund was infuriated. Don't insult the Great Yu Empire, kid. We just don't want to become enemies with the Night King clan. I'll report your conditions to the higher-ups, but before that, release your hostages. Do I look stupid? Lu Yin asked disdainfully. Sigmund didn't say anything but Tori Anna did. Kid, don't make a mistake. Your performance in the trial is enough to enter the Empire's Yu Academy. You won't be dragged down by Earth, and it's not just you. The few Earthlings around you can also join the Yu Academy. This is the Great Yu Empire's special treatment for you. If you threaten the Empire again, this special treatment will disappear and you will experience true despair. Looks like these two aren't high enough for you to spout so much nonsense, Lu Yin said indifferently. Tori Anna was furious. Hua Xiaoling glared at Lu Yin. Let me go and I'll plead for you. Me too, let me go and don't touch me, Jenny said anxiously. Lu Yin threatened, one more word and I'll stuff a smelly sock in each of your mouths. Hua Xiaoling and Jenny gritted their teeth in anger. Zhang Dingtian and Bai Shui silently stood beside Lu Yin. To them, this was Earth's only chance. The fate of countless cultivators on Earth depended on them. Gerlin stuck out her tongue and left these lunatics. Geraldine looked at Lu Yin with a complicated expression and retreated as well. This trial was something she would never forget. The scene froze for a moment. Lu Yin's breathing was ragged. His body had reached its limit during his battle with Qingyu and his face was pale. Suddenly, a terrifying pressure descended upon him, causing his hands to tremble as his body was restrained by an indescribable force. He couldn't move and the rubble on the ground turned to dust. Tori Anna suddenly appeared in front of Lu Yin and kicked him, sending him flying 100 meters before crashing into the ground. He then waved his hand, sending Zhang Dingtian and Bai Shui flying with a gust of wind. Lu Yin coughed up a mouthful of blood as his 5 viscera and 6 bowels felt like they had been crushed. A deep footprint had been left on his chest, and the kick had almost pierced through his body. He had felt the terror of a space-exploring powerhouse just now, and it had been an irresistible power that had rendered him immobile. Toriana's cold gaze swept over Lu Yin. A mere ant dares to raise conditions with us? We wanted to leave your life to Qingyu, but you're courting death. Jenny Anna glared at Lu Yin as well. Wu Shaoling sighed and looked over as well, admiring this person. It wasn't easy for a native to reach this level, but the difference between them was too great. There were many geniuses in the universe, and Lu Yin was undeniably a genius who could defeat Qingyu. But so what? The universe was too big and there was no shortage of geniuses. Lu Yin lowered his head, his vision blurry. His body had reached its limit. At this point, Sigmund opened his gadget to talk to someone. Toriana turned to Sigmund. General Mathers, I think we should kill this person. He's unruly and has an unknown background. Sending him to the battlefield will only bring trouble to the Empire. Sigmund ignored Toriana, his gaze growing incredulous as he looked at his gadget. Toriana saw that Sigmund wasn't speaking, so he slowly raised a hand and aimed it at Lu Yin. Don't think that you can wait until Qingyu comes to kill you. It'll be very difficult for him to come to the Great Yu Empire again. You can't wait any longer, so die. Zhang Dingtian roared, but he couldn't get up. Roz stood there in a sorry state, sneering at the scene. On the spacecraft, Mira stood up and was about to make a move. Stop, Toriana. Sigmund suddenly roared. Toriana was stunned and looked at Sigmund in surprise. What's wrong? Sigmund's face grew solemn as he looked at Lu Yin with apprehension and a hint of anticipation. Men, collect some of his blood and give it to me. A soldier dressed in the Great Yu Empire's uniform immediately walked over to Lu Yin and crouched down to collect the blood at the corner of his mouth. Lu Yin opened his eyes, his pupils shrinking at the sight of the soldier. You? The soldier shushed him and blinked. My family sent their regards. You performed well, so give me your blood. Lu Yin didn't hesitate and took out a bottle of blood from his cosmic ring, handing it to the soldier. The soldier smiled at Lu Yin before turning around and returning to Sigmund with a solemn expression. General, the blood. Sigmund opened his hand and the blood sample flew towards the spacecraft. No one spoke, as if they were waiting for something. Lu Yin stared at the soldier who had returned to the formation and exhaled with a smile. He had finally taken the first step. The blood sample he had left at Jinlin's camp had finally yielded results. The Great Yu Empire was very strict when it came to testing cultivators, and Lu Yin's display of strength was enough to attract them. They naturally wanted to collect his blood for testing, and the blood he had left at Jinlin's camp had been for this very moment. His performance had been so that the Great Yu Empire could test his blood in Jinlin, and everything had gone according to his plan. After a while, Sigmund listened to the answer on his gadget and looked at Lu Yin excitedly. He immediately appeared beside him and helped him up. Tell me, why are you on Earth? What's your name? Who else is at home? How old are you? The others were puzzled. Shalosh and Toriana quickly made contact with some people and looked at Lu Yin in shock. The Great Yu Empire was about to be shaken. Within the spacecraft, Mira looked at the data displayed on the screen in astonishment. Are you sure? Isn't this too much of a coincidence? The person in front of the device stared at the data nervously. There's no mistake, there's absolutely no mistake. This is the Xian bloodline, and that child is definitely a descendant of the Xian family. Mira was speechless. Before coming to the Great Yu Empire, she had done some research on this country and it was quite legendary. It had originally been a very weak country, but two people had risen to power and forcibly raised it to the level of a top-notch power in the Frostwave Weave. One of them was called Undying Yushan, and the other was called Undying Zishan. They were a famous duo in the Outerverse. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 62. Undying Yushan was the name of the emperor of the Great Yu Empire. Undying Zishan had died long ago, and the Zishan family had gradually died out along with him. Eventually, the entire family had gone into seclusion and disappeared. A few hundred years ago, the Zishan family had been confirmed to have completely died out and no one had survived. Who would have thought that a member of the Zishan family would actually appear on this planet? It was too coincidental. The Zishan family's influence on the Great Yu Empire couldn't be ignored. The Undying Yushan had once promised that the Zishan family would forever enjoy the title of King Zishan, a status second only to the emperor. If this person really was a descendant of the Zishan family, it would be a pity. Back on Earth, Zhang Dingtian and the rest looked on in confusion, unsure of what was happening. Lu Yin stood up with great difficulty, his body swaying as he almost fell over again, but he managed to hold on. Tori's kick had been too heavy. "What are you doing?" Sigmund asked solemnly. "Child, tell me, where are you from?" Lu Yin sneered. "Earth." Sigmund shook his head. "Earth's trial, everything was within our observation. You're definitely not from Earth, they don't have any battle techniques." Lu Yin wiped the corner of his mouth. "I'm from Earth, I left when I was young. Believe it or not." Sigmund wanted to ask more questions, but seeing Lu Yin's tired and pale face, he immediately ordered someone to bring him to the spacecraft for treatment. "Wait, what about them?" Lu Yin pointed at Zhang Dingtian and Bai Shui. Sigmund replied, "Don't worry, the Empire won't touch Earth. Everything will remain the same. Not only that, we can also send people to help Earth clean up the powerful mutant beast." He then shouted, "Men!" A group of soldiers immediately stepped forward. There were several hundred of them, all sentinels and melders. These soldiers had cultivated using the energy crystals of their respective planets without using formcast models, and were the lowest level of cultivators in the Empire. Being able to cultivate to the melder realm was already the limit. Spread out immediately to protect China and the other cities on Earth, especially the ones where there's a beast tide. Move out immediately. Sigmund barked. "Yes, General." Hundreds of soldiers rose into the air and flew out. Zhang Dingtian and Bai Shui heaved a sigh of relief when they saw this. No one stopped them, not even Tori or Shalash. Lu Yin's identity had been confirmed, and he had even been teleported to the Empire. A descendant of the Zishan family wasn't someone they could make things difficult for. The undying Yushan had ruled the Great Yu Empire for 800 years, and with his strength he could live for at least 1,000 years. His iron rule had made the great empire and no one dared to disobey. There was an iron rule and the Zishan family's throne. The Zishan family's rule was an eternal ruler. Though it didn't have any actual power, it was with the families of family and Shalash. Lu Yin was sent to a spacecraft and everyone inside was on high alert. The moment Lu Yin appeared, they immediately arranged for him to be treated. Their attitude was extremely cautious. Yusus. The sentinels were fine, but Hu Shaoling and the others were in an even worse mood. They'd failed a sentinel trial as melders, and this record had almost shattered their dreams of joining the Astral Combat Academy. There was something else that most students didn't care about, but those at Hu Xiaoling's level had their eyes fixed on the Great Yu Empire's Youth Council. The Youth Council had a lot of power, overseeing trials, interfering with the Academy's education, and even having their own army. It was a force that couldn't be ignored, and all of them wanted to become members. However, this trial's blemish greatly reduced their chances of joining. The atmosphere was heavy. Only Zhang Dingtian and Bai Shui were rejoicing. Many things had happened and there had been sorrow and despair. But in the end, Earth had been saved. They were grateful to Lu Yin. Even if they had been saved, the countless cultivators on Earth would have been sent to the battlefield with no chance of survival. Roz looked at the spacecraft unwillingly. He wanted to kill Lu Yin, but Shalash had warned him not to be impudent. Yen Gang was also sullen after his conversation with Tori Anna. He'd thought that this trial would be easy, but he'd ended up as a foil instead. He hadn't even qualified to participate in the final battle, and Hu Shaoling had even been threatened by Lu Yin. He couldn't explain himself when he returned, but he couldn't do anything to Lu Yin. As for Eddie, Varen and the others, they didn't even dare to show any hostility towards Lu Yin. They didn't know about the Zishan family, but they could tell from Sigmund's attitude that there was something wrong with Lu Yin. It was best not to provoke him in the future, even on Earth. He had a realm breaker, an innate gift device, and who knew what else he had. Suddenly, the spacecraft sounded an alarm, and Sigmund and the others looked to the north where a huge shadow was approaching. All of the students looked over, their mouths hanging open. "What a huge turtle!" someone exclaimed. Zhang Dingtian and the rest were shocked. It was the flying turtle that had destroyed the blue camp in the northeast and appeared in the capital. Yen Gang's face turned ashen. This was the same turtle that had made him eat dirt. Sigmund Mathers, Tori Anna, and Shalash soared into the sky at the same time, releasing a terrifying amount of star energy that stirred up the clouds and caused the sky to change color. The three of them were explorers, and so was the tortoise. An explorer-level mutant beast has actually appeared in such a short time. This planet is truly surprising, Tori sighed. Sigmund's expression turned serious. This turtle wasn't simple, nor was it weak. Seeing the three little things blocking its way, the turtle's eyes remained calm and unperturbed. It slowly opened its mouth, and just as the three were about to attack, a girl suddenly appeared on its head. "Little turtle, don't be naughty. They're good people, you can't hit them." The trio looked at her in shock. "Lulu Mavis?" Lulu greeted them from atop the turtle's head. "Long time no see, how have you been?" The three were speechless. Long time? It hadn't even been a month. "Miss Lulu, this turtle?" Sigmund was both puzzled and shocked. A Sentinel student had subdued an explorer turtle? What a joke. Lulu immediately went on guard. "It's mine, it'll always be mine." Sigmund forced a smile. Yes, it's yours. Forgive me for asking, but how did you subdue it?" Lulu's lips curled up in a strange smile. "That's a secret of the Mavis family. Come, I'll tell you." Sigmund quickly waved his hands. No need. Since it's a secret of your family, it's not convenient for me to listen. Anyway, the trial is over, what do you think? Lulu felt it was a pity. So soon? What about the fugitive? Was he caught? There's no news from the local network. All the students who had come here had thrown away their gadgets to prevent their information from being exposed, so there was naturally no news from the local network. Tori Anna recounted the events that transpired here, and Lulu's expression changed. "The Night King? You mean that fugitive from the Day-Night clan awakened and became a Night King?" The three nodded. Lulu sighed. "That's interesting, no wonder you didn't dare to kill him and even tried to save him. It was clearly a fair trial." Sigmund was embarrassed. Lu Yin could have killed Qingyu at the last moment, but he had ruined it. They were the ones who had not followed the rules of this trial. What a pity, if only I had arrived earlier. Killing a Night King with my own hands would have been a great accomplishment. The clan would have definitely praised me, Lulu lamented. The three didn't interrupt. The Day-Night clan and the Mavis family were not people the Great Yu Empire could afford to offend. Lulu Mavis looked at Sigmund and said, "Forget it. Since we missed it, we can't catch up even if we wanted to. The trial is over, so it's time for me to leave. Little Turtle can follow behind the ship, right?" Sigmund smiled. "Of course, the spacecraft can tow it, but I'm afraid it won't be able to withstand the pressure of the spatial jump." "Don't worry, Little Turtle is very powerful." Lulu didn't mind at all, jumping to the turtle's ear and whispering something. The giant turtle obediently rose into the air and lay down quietly beneath the spacecraft, closing its eyes to rest. Compared to the spaceship, the tortoise was still a little smaller, but not by much. It was shocking. Lulu Mavis entered the spacecraft, her interest piqued. Lu Yin had almost killed a newly awakened Night King, which was something that would shake the entire Immerse. However, it had happened to a native Sentinel. She clearly remembered that he hadn't even had the strength to do so before. How interesting. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 63. News of the Great Yu Empire's trial was out of reach for the people of Earth. They only knew that the apocalypse had occurred, and that powerhouses had appeared to protect their colonies. As for what had actually happened, only a select few knew. One by one, the students were escorted onto the spaceship. Of the 237 students who participated in the trial, only 150 made it back alive. In other words, 87 students had died in this trial. Sigmund's expression was calm when he heard the numbers. The death rate wasn't considered high. There was a 50% chance of death in any trial, so it was fine as long as it was kept under 50%. Of course, no one would care if the death rate exceeded 50% unless it was the death of a certain noble. There were quite a few students at Geraldine's level who were in high spirits. They had originally only planned to occupy a piece of land and come back alive. However, the strongest students of the academy, especially the second batch of students, were in an extremely bad mood. All of their faces were taut and as ugly as they could be. Zhang Dingtian and Bai Shui had made an exception to join the Great Yu Empire. One of them was a realm breaker while the other had an innate gift. Both of them could join the 13 imperial squadrons. Zhou Xian and Wu Xing had also been allowed to join, but they had refused, wanting to remain on Earth. Sigmund didn't mind. These two were too weak compared to Zhang Dingtian and Bai Shui. Even if they joined the empire, they would only be ordinary soldiers. Aside from them, the Indian monk Saruzin had also joined the Great Yu Empire. He was the only one other than Zhang Dingtian and the rest to join the empire. Lu Yin was treated for 2 hours before his chest wound was finally under control. When he opened his eyes, he saw Zhang Dingtian and Bai Shui. "How is it?" he asked weakly. Zhang Dingtian's voice was low. "It's over, but Earth hasn't changed. The Great Yu Empire will continue to monitor the situation and send soldiers to clean up the zombies. Thank you, Lu Yin." "Thank you," Bai Shui said gratefully. Lu Yin coughed and got off the ground, looking at the white clouds floating by. "Are we leaving?" Zhang Dingtian nodded. "Zhou Xian and Wuxia have decided to stay on Earth. Aside from the three of us, the Indian monk Saruzin has also joined the Great Yu Empire." Lu Yin was surprised. "The Indian monk? Is he powerful?" Zhang Dingtian was full of admiration. "He's an amazing person. Take a look for yourself. He's outside, and the Great Yu Empire will arrange for us to join Yu Academy." Lu Yin walked out of the treatment room and immediately saw the Indian ascetic. He was barefooted and half-clothed, and his entire body was bronze in color. He was so thin that he looked like a bag of bones. At first glance, he looked like an exquisite bronze statue. More importantly, his right hand was raised high up in the air. Nobody knew how long it had been raised there, but it had long since withered and deformed. It no longer looked like a hand but more like a tree branch. His beard had been tied up in circles around his withered right hand. The passers-by all looked over in surprise. Lu Yin was stunned. "This is the Indian monk, Saruzin?" Zhang Dingtian was a strong-willed person, but even he looked at Saruzin strangely. Bai Shui was even more shocked. "He's Saruzin, the only person on Earth who broke through to the Sentinel realm without receiving anything from Qingyu. He defeated Hayden and is the strongest in the academy," Zhang Dingtian said solemnly. "How did he become a cultivator?" Lu Yin was bewildered. Saruzin would find it difficult to even fight a mutant beast in his current state, let alone mutant beasts. He wouldn't even have an advantage against a normal person. "I don't know, he hasn't spoken yet," Zhang Dingtian said. "I can answer that." Sigmund walked over and the people around him immediately bowed. Zhang Dingtian and Bai Shui were indifferent. They had joined the Great Yu Empire to become stronger, and they didn't have a good impression of it. Of course, they didn't hate it either. The planet's evolution had been brought about by Qingyu, and it had nothing to do with the Great Yu Empire. Lu Yin looked at Sigmund and asked, despite knowing the answer, "You seem to treat me differently, why?" Sigmund smiled. "I'll explain it to you. The spaceship is about to leave Earth. Do you have anything you want to tell me?" Lu Yin muttered to himself, "Go to Jinling and pick up someone called Zhou Xian. He's my little brother." Sigmund nodded and didn't ask any more questions, instead giving some instructions to his gadget. "I can answer your question," he glanced at Saruzin. "This is a person with great perseverance." He sat alone in the middle of two groups of mutant beasts, his body covered in blood, but his face showed no fear. He picked up energy crystals after the fight and swallowed them to reach the Sentinel realm. His perseverance is rare and his heart has unimaginable perseverance. Lu Yin and the other two looked over in shock. This person had sat alone in the middle of a battlefield of mutant beasts and was still a normal person. Was this person crazy? How had he not been eaten? "I made an exception for this person and allowed him to join the Great Yu Empire. His perseverance has piqued the interest of some people and he might have a bright future," Sigmund told Lu Yin. Saruzin looked up at Lu Yin with murky eyes and stood up, his bare feet stepping on the cold metal floor as he slowly bowed in front of Lu Yin. Lu Yin didn't understand. "The thank you," Saruzin's voice was hoarse as if he hadn't spoken in a long time. "You're welcome," Lu Yin replied. "You don't look like an Indian." Saruzin straightened up. "I was born in the Tibetan peak of Wuxia and trained in India." He bowed again and turned to leave. Sigmund left as well. He was in charge of the aftermath and had many things to do. "Let's go, we'll take a look around. This is a huge spacecraft from the Great Yu Empire, and it's worth as much as an entire planet," Lu Yin said. "I'm not going, there's a gravity room and a small library here. I want to take a look," Zhang Dingtian said indifferently and left. Lu Yin looked over at Bai Shui. She was breathtakingly beautiful and comfortable to look at. Bai Shui still hadn't recovered from the incident with Lu Xiaoge, so she apologized to Lu Yin and left as well. Lu Yin was helpless. He might as well have left Saruzin behind. That guy's appearance was terrifying and most people wouldn't dare to make a move on him. This super-large spaceship was called the Perseverance. It was a spaceship specially used to transport students. Its range was larger than the capital and it had all the necessary facilities. Just the gravity rooms alone had over 100, and it could carry over 300 personal spaceships. All the personal spaceships of the students were stored on the Perseverance. The Perseverance was divided into training areas, machinery areas, living quarters, observation areas, control areas, and so on. Lu Yin was currently in the living quarters and on the top floor. He had his own courtyard and it was even equipped with a swimming pool, medical facilities, and so on. There were only 3 such accommodations on the Perseverance, and he occupied one of them. His living quarters were even better than Xianxia's. The other students lived on the lower floor, which had hundreds of rooms. Each room was quite large, but the difference was like night and day when compared to Lu Yin's quarters. Lu Yin walked down to the lower floor where most of the students lived. The staff lived on the other side while the soldiers lived on the lowest floor. The living quarters were surrounded by layers of transparent metal, and Lu Yin tested them to find that they were quite sturdy. This kind of metal can only be shattered by space-exploring powerhouses. With your strength, you won't even be able to leave a mark on it, Xiao Luo said with a gentle smile as he slowly approached from a short distance away. Lu Yin turned around. Why didn't I see you during the battle in India? Xiao Luo smiled, not interested. Lu Yin raised an eyebrow. As a trial student, how can you not be interested in the trial mission with your strength? I'm really curious. Xiao Luo walked to Lu Yin's side and peered through the metal to see a giant tortoise's tail sweeping back and forth. You just need to achieve your goal in the trial, there's no need to worry about the mission. Xiao Luo turned to Lu Yin. Congratulations on defeating Qingyu. This is enough to make the Great Yu Empire look at you in a new light. Lu Yin shrugged. It was just a trick, I couldn't have defeated him. There are no tricks in this universe, a win is a win. Lu Yin, no, brother Lu, do you know what it means to defeat a Night King? Xiao Luo smiled. Lu Yin shook his head. Xiao Luo looked outside. It means that you've entered the Day-Night clan's sights. Unless you don't go to the Innerverse, the Day-Night clan will target you. Lu Yin shrugged. That means I'm in trouble. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 64. Xiao Luo laughed. Not entirely, they might even try to recruit you. But there's one thing you did right. You didn't reveal the Day-Night clan's battle techniques. Otherwise you would have been dead. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. He hadn't revealed the Day-Night fist during his battle with Qingyu because the Day-Night clan's battle techniques couldn't be leaked. Once they were exposed, it wouldn't just be the Day-Night clan. All the other powers in the universe would come looking for him and try to obtain the Day-Night clan's battle techniques. That would be a huge problem. Lulu had the Mavis family backing her, and even the Day-Night clan couldn't do anything about it. What about Xiao Luo? Lu Yin looked at Xiao Luo seriously. I'm curious, what did you get? Xiao Luo smiled. Nothing much. At that moment, a figure slowly walked around the corner. Both Lu Yin and Xiao Luo looked over at the same time and saw a man with short silver hair. What a coincidence, Silver greeted them with a smile, acting as if they were close friends. Lu Yin's heart skipped a beat. Here it was again. He felt an inexplicable sense of danger every time he faced Silver, even though his current strength was far greater than when he had been under the moonlight in Nanjing. Xiao Luo's expression turned serious for a rare moment, and he turned to leave without saying anything to Silver. Lu Yin was surprised. Silver approached Lu Yin and stopped 3 meters away. I heard you almost killed Qingyu during the trial, congratulations. Lu Yin's lips curled up. You're welcome, Qingyu wasn't bad. He barely forced me to use 50% of my strength. Silver's smile grew even brighter. Actually, I've fought Qingyu before and he barely forced me to use 30% of my strength. Lu Yin rolled his eyes. This guy was still as shameless as ever. I'm leaving, we'll meet again if fate wills it, Silver said as he walked past Lu Yin. However, he suddenly paused after a few steps. Perhaps we'll meet again soon. Astral Combat Academy? Lu Yin asked. Silver smiled and left with a wave of his hand. Lu Yin exhaled. Each one was weirder than the last. Of all the students on Earth, Xiao Luo, Silver and Lulu were the ones he feared the most. He didn't know their limits. Yen Gang and Munoer were melders with their cultivations sealed, but what about these three? Lu Yin really didn't know and he couldn't tell. When he thought of Munoer he couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. He had forcefully fed Munoer some medicine to Qingyu, which had been the key to Qingyu's defeat. Without Munoer Lu Yin would never have been able to defeat Qingyu. He was his benefactor, but that person probably didn't have a good impression of him. After looking around for a while Lu Yin left as well. He wanted to take a look around. Ultra-sized spacecraft were not easy to find, and there were only a few of them in the entire Great Yu Empire. Most cultivators would be lucky if they could even use a personal spacecraft to travel the universe. Although this floor was not as well equipped as the top floor, there were still many things that interested Lu Yin, such as the bar. Students were under a lot of pressure. They needed to relax before the trial and party after the trial. The bar was the most lively place. As soon as Lu Yin stepped into the bar he bumped into someone. "Fuck you." The student who had been knocked back took 2 steps back and was about to curse when he saw Lu Yin. He immediately shut his mouth and revealed a smile that was uglier than a crying face. "Isn't this Brother Lu? Big Brother Lu, please come in. It's spacious inside." Lu Yin looked at him suspiciously. "Excuse me, do we know each other?" The student's mouth twitched but he forced a smile. I'm one of the 42 students you caught." Lu Yin nodded and walked into the bar without a hint of guilt. The student heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly left. He didn't want to stay with this troublemaker who was the public enemy of all students. The bar on the spacecraft was just as noisy as the ones on Earth, filled with singing and dancing. The only difference was that there was no sex or drugs here. It was just students partying. Lu Yin found a random corner and ordered a drink, looking around as he drank. The bar was huge and there were not only students, but also off-duty staff and military officers. There were people of all ages in the bar. There were many battle scenes on the screens as well as news and songs from the Great Yu Empire. Lu Yin's head hurt. It was too chaotic. Not far away, a dozen or so students raised their glasses. "Congratulations, senior, for finding the rare mutant metal. Your results in this trial are the best in the academy." "Congratulations, senior." "Congratulations, senior." "Thank you, juniors. I told you that the trial wasn't easy, but that idiot Hayden still charged forward and didn't even touch Qingyu's hair. He was even captured by the natives, huh?" "That's not all, senior. He was even defeated by some Indian monk. Eddie had to help him get back at them, huh? How can an idiot born at the bottom of the sea compare to us? His brain isn't working well, so he's done for this trial." On the other side of the bar there were people celebrating as well. They were all students who hadn't reached the top of the academy, but they had gained quite a bit from this trial. They didn't have much ambition and didn't plan on entering Astral 10. Lu Yin couldn't help but laugh at the self-comforting words of these insignificant people and took a sip of his drink. The door to the bar was blasted open with a bang and everyone looked over. Eddie and Hayden slowly walked in. Everyone instantly fell silent. They knew their place. They had only dared to cause a ruckus because the strongest students weren't around, but now that they were here they didn't dare to say a word. Following closely behind Eddie and Hayden was Jenny Anna. She had a look of displeasure on her face. Many students hurriedly left, afraid of being made difficult for. "Scram, all of you," Hayden barked as he walked over to the group of students who had just celebrated. The students were furious, but they obediently stood up and gave up their seats. Eddie and Hayden took up a spot that could fit a dozen people, their expressions gloomy. Jenny Anna went to the second floor where there were private rooms. "Hey, make way," Lu Yin was drinking when he heard a voice. He looked over and saw that it was the group that had been chased away by Hayden. "Are you talking to me?" he asked, pointing at himself. "Cut the crap and scram," a tall student said unhappily. Lu Yin laughed and looked past the students to Hayden and Eddie. "Hey, you two over there. You're taking their seats and they're trying to make trouble for me. Help me deal with them." The students were stunned. This person knew Hayden and the others? Not far away, Eddie and Hayden stared at Lu Yin as if he was a ghost. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 65. Not far away, Jenny saw Lu Yin as well. She was stunned at first, then furious that this bastard dared to threaten her. Isn't this Roz? Did you miss me already? Lu Yin greeted with a smile. Roz's face twitched. You've recovered? Thank you for your concern, I'm mostly healed now. What can I do for you? Lu Yin took another sip from his glass. Roz's eyes narrowed with a cold glint, and behind him Munoer was trembling with rage. Lu Yin's eyes lit up when he saw Munoer. So you're here as well. Sorry for using you as a shield. Speaking of which, your sky beast claw is quite powerful. Without you I wouldn't have been able to deal with Qingyu. Munoer was furious, clenching his fists and gritting his teeth. Lu Yin. Don't be so arrogant, Lu Yin. Jenny suddenly shouted from nearby, glaring at him. Lu Yin looked at her in surprise. Arrogant? I don't think so. By the way, I've always had a question. I heard you and Hua Xiaoling are rivals, but why is she a melder and you a sentinel? Bastard. Jenny gritted her teeth in anger. The dozen or so students were scared out of their wits. They'd thought that Lu Yin was just a small fry, but he'd provoked a monster instead. They'd all heard of Lu Yin, the person who'd almost killed the fugitive Qingyu. Roz and the others had all been his spoils of war. More importantly, he was rumored to be a descendant of the Xian family. How could they have run into such a monster? At this moment, a soldier entered the bar and whispered something to Lu Yin. Lu Yin put down his glass and smiled at Jenny and the rest before getting up and leaving the bar. Roz and the others glared at his departing figure, wanting to teach him a lesson, but they didn't dare. They would be the ones suppressed if they did, and Lu Yin's identity was terrifying. Zhou Xian was brought over, and the soldier had come to inform Lu Yin of the news. Cultivators with innate gifts were rare. Only Hua Xiaoling had been confirmed to have an innate gift, and only Bai Shui had been confirmed to have one on Earth. Even Qingyu hadn't revealed his innate gift, and Lu Yin didn't know if he had one, but innate gifts were a sign of geniuses in the universe. Zhou Xian's innate gift, and he'd definitely be useful in the future. As soon as he walked out of the bar, he saw a group of soldiers pass by. His eyes flashed as he slowly walked forward, and as he brushed shoulders with the soldiers, a sentence entered his ears. Your family wants you to find a way to join the Great Yu Empire's youth council that's about to be reorganized. Lu Yin was the only one who heard this. No one else did. Soon the soldiers turned the corner and left. Lu Yin's the Great Yu Youth Council? This wasn't simple, but it wasn't impossible. Being a member of the Xian family didn't have any authority, but being a member of the youth council was a symbol of power. Formcast models could only be used by youths, and once one's body passed the age limit, they wouldn't be able to withstand the formcast model. Thus, some youths with innate cultivation talent could transform their power very quickly, and some even became terrifying. The Youth Council was an organization in charge of the younger generation's trials, education and trials. Whether it was in the Great Yu Empire or elsewhere, the Youth Council was a special organization. The Xian family had some status in the Great Yu Empire, but they were useless outside. However, being a member of the Youth Council was a status regardless of whether it was in the innerverse or the outerverse. The Great Yu Empire couldn't interfere with the selection process, and if Lu Yin wanted to join, his status as a member of the Xian family would only play a supporting role. Not long after Lu Yin returned to his residence, Zhou Xian was brought over. Boss, I finally get to see you. Zhou Xian cried out when he saw Lu Yin. He had suffered a lot during this time. Ever since Lu Yin had left Nanjing, he had been like a rootless duckweed. Because of his shifty appearance, no one wanted to be on good terms with him. He didn't even have anyone to talk to, not even Feng Hong or Luo Yi. If not for his Earth Realm strength, he might not have been able to survive in the camp. Even so, his combat ability was still very poor. Fortunately, Zhou Xian had treated him well out of respect for Lu Yin and hadn't arranged for him to go to dangerous places. However, ever since Zhou Xian had left Nanjing for the capital, Zhou Xian's good days had come to an end. All the captains with Earth Realm strength were stationed in different places, and Zhou Xian was no exception. He often faced powerful mutant beasts and almost died there. This was especially true during the recent beast wave. If not for a few Realm of Sky powerhouses mysteriously appearing to help Nanjing, he really would have died. He had thought that he would be stuck in Nanjing for the rest of his life, but who would have thought that he would be brought to a spaceship in the blink of an eye? Zhou Xian had always been trembling in fear, afraid that he would be dissected and studied by the aliens. When he saw Lu Yin, he was so excited that he almost cried. He had always been wary of Lu Yin, but now that he was in a foreign place, Lu Yin was his only family. He decided to follow this person to the death and hold on to him tightly. Lu Yin laughed. "All right, you can continue to follow me from now on. I'll get someone to prepare a room for you, so feel free to stay there." Zhou Xian cried out, "Boss, I'll stay with you. I won't go anywhere else." "No, I don't like staying with men. Don't worry, you'll be safe here. There will be people to protect you." "My status here isn't low," Lu Yin said calmly. Zhou Xian was shocked. "Boss, this is an alien spaceship. Your status isn't low?" Lu Yin didn't have the time to explain. He had the soldiers take Zhou Xian away and arrange for him to stay next to Zhang Dingtian's. Including Zhou Xian, there were a total of 4 people who had walked out from Earth. If he was included, that would be 5. 5 people had joined the Great Yu Empire, which wasn't a small number. In the past trials, no more than 3 people had walked out from the native planets, and most of them had been sent to the battlefield. To the elites of the Great Yu Empire, the so-called geniuses of native planets weren't even worth mentioning. Earth was already pretty good, especially with Lu Xiaoge, who had entered the Innerverse. A day later, Lu Yin was immersed in his star chart when the Perseverance vibrated, followed by a loud roar from the turtle. Lu Yin walked to the window and the scenery in front of him quickly receded. In the blink of an eye, he was surrounded by darkness. They had entered the universe, and outside the window was the beautiful blue of Earth. Lu Yin's gaze was complicated. He had stayed on this planet for nearly 2 years, and in his limited memories, this was the place he remembered the most. Now that he had left, he didn't know when he would return. At the same time, Zhang Dingtian, Bai Shui, Zhou Xian, and Surizen all stared at the beautiful blue of Earth. They had left this place, their home, and they didn't know if they would ever return. Perhaps this would be an eternal farewell. The cosmos was vast and boundless, but it was filled with danger. Whether it came from people or the environment, they didn't have the ability to protect themselves. Zhang Dingtian gripped his sword tightly and turned around, his gaze resolute. Bai Shui's gaze was complicated, and no one knew what she was thinking. Zhou Xian muttered to himself, his eyes full of reluctance. He didn't want to leave, but he was smart enough to know that he didn't have a choice, so he didn't tell anyone. Surizen was the calmest, simply watching the blue planet disappear from his sight. After an unknown amount of time, the Perseverance steadily shuttled through space. Lu Yin arrived at Sigmund's command room. He was both a general and the captain of the Perseverance. The command room was located at the top of the spacecraft, and the interior was very ordinary. There were no dazzling buttons, only various screens displaying various star charts. Sigmund looked at the shuttling space with his hands behind his back. "How does it feel to leave Earth?" "Sad and reluctant," Lu Yin answered. Sigmund turned to look at Lu Yin. "I've investigated you, but aside from the information on Earth, we couldn't find anything else about you. Can you tell me where you're from?" "I've lost my memories," Lu Yin answered. Sigmund's brows shot up. Lu Yin smiled. "Believe it or not, I've lost my memories. I only have memories of Earth." Sigmund nodded. "That's none of my business. I called you here to tell you something." "The Xian family?" Lu Yin asked. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 66. Looks like you've heard something. The Zishan and Yushan families are 2 of the most important families in the Great Yu Empire. 800 years ago, His Majesty the Undying Yushan inherited the Great Yu Empire and bestowed the title of king upon the Undying Zishan. However, the Undying Zishan died during an adventure, and the Zishan family was forced to retire for some reason. You are their only descendant. Lu Yin's eyes flickered, but he didn't speak. I know what you're thinking. The Undying Zishan was not killed by His Majesty, everyone knows that. What? Lu Yin was confused. Sigmund sighed. Before His Majesty inherited the throne, the Great Yu Empire was a very weak power in the Frostwave Weave. It was His Majesty and the Undying Zishan who worked hard to bring the Great Yu Empire to its current state, but that wasn't enough. His Majesty's wish was to bring the Great Yu Empire into the Innerverse, and without the Undying Zishan, it would have been difficult for His Majesty to accomplish this alone. His Majesty's vision was far, and he would not have killed the Undying Zishan at that time. Enough, I don't have time to listen to the great Yu Empire's past. I just want to know my current status, Lu Yin said impatiently. Sigmund spoke solemnly. I have received orders from His Imperial Majesty to be the heir to the Zishan throne. Lu Yin, from the moment your identity was confirmed, you are King Zishan, the great Yu Empire's King Zishan. Lu Yin was shocked. That easy? Don't I have to go through a series of complicated procedures? Don't I have to go to the great Yu Empire's capital star to be tested again? Sigmund shook his head. There's no need for that. All of the data on the Perseverance is connected to the Empire, and everything about you is in His Majesty's eyes. He has already acknowledged you as the official King Zishan. Once you return to the capital star and meet His Majesty, all of King Zishan's rights will be bestowed upon you. Lu Yin's eyes lit up. This was what he liked the most. In order to fight Qingyu, he had used up all of his star crystals to extend the time-stop space to 5 days. All of the star crystals he had stolen during the trial were gone, and he had been fretting over how to get more. By the way, if you need any help on the capital star in the future, you can look for the Mathers family. I've already told them to help you as much as possible, Sigmund said, handing over a very ordinary gadget. Take it, it's convenient. Lu Yin glanced at him and nodded. Thank you. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. Sigmund nodded, but just as Lu Yin reached the door, he suddenly said, There's a woman called Mira. Be careful if you see her. Lu Yin grunted in acknowledgement and left the command center. Sigmund's attitude was strange. Even if he was the so-called Zishan king, he was at most an idle prince with no real power. There was no reason for him to treat him so well. Was he related to the Zishan family? At the same time, Raz met Shalash. What? That bastard is really a descendant of the Zishan clan, and he was even acknowledged by His Majesty as the next king of Zishan? Raz shouted in disbelief. Shalash's gloomy eyes stared at Raz. Raz felt a chill run down his spine and hurriedly took 2 steps back, not daring to speak again. Remember, don't yell at me in the future or I'll cut your tongue off, Shalash said coldly. Raz's forehead broke out in cold sweat as he hurriedly apologized. Although his father was the Vice Minister of Finance, his authority couldn't compare to the 13 Imperial squadrons. Shalash was the Vice Captain of the 12th Squadron, and his real power far exceeded his father's. If not for his father's financial power, Shalash wouldn't have bothered with him at all. Stay away from that Lu Yin if you see him in the future. It's just a title, but if he uses it to pressure you, you'll have to obediently accept it, Shalash said coldly. Raz hurriedly acknowledged. Shalash snorted and looked towards the dark universe. King Zishan? Let's see how long you can hold it. If you cause trouble, the Empire will fall into chaos. On the other side, Jenny Anna was furious as well. Why is it like this? A prince with a different surname is no joke. How can a native like him inherit the throne? Tori smiled bitterly. Don't be angry, young mistress. This matter has already been confirmed, and the captain told you to stay away from him in the future. What's so great about King Zishan? Jenny asked unhappily. Tori was helpless. He wanted to tell her something, but he didn't dare. If he did, she would definitely go berserk. Forget it, he'll just let the family head tell her. For the next 2 days, Lu Yin didn't leave his room as he focused on recovering and studying the star chart. The 4th star's power was almost twice that of the previous 3, and he was looking forward to the appearance of the 5th star. If 5 stars appeared during his battle with Qingyu, then he wouldn't even need the help of a melder to crush Qingyu. It was a pity that the Sirius technique was only at the elementary level and could only simulate 8 stars at most. Once he became a melder, the Sirius palm's effectiveness would decrease, especially when he fought against geniuses who all had powerful battle techniques. The Sirius palm wouldn't be able to keep up. Is the reason you're looking at the star chart every day related to your technique? A pleasant voice sounded from behind him, followed by a delicate fragrance. Lu Yin's expression changed and he turned around to see a pure beauty with white hair that reached her ankles. A small tuft of hair was tied up on her forehead, and she was looking at him with interest. Who are you? Lu Yin didn't act rashly. His first reaction was that he was no match for this woman. She had been able to sneak up on him without him noticing, and even the Sirius technique hadn't reacted. I'm Mira, the white-haired beauty smiled faintly, her eyes staring at Lu Yin with a hint of red. Mira. Lu Yin's heart skipped a beat as he recalled what Sigmund had told him 2 days ago. warning him to be careful of this woman. Do you need something from me? Mira smiled and walked past him, her white hair fluttering in the wind. She slowly sat down and crossed her right leg over her left. She was barefooted and her round and cute toes twitched. Her fingernails were painted a seductive red as she stared at him. Can you tell me why you look at the star chart every day? Lu Yin looked at her solemnly. I lost my memories and I'm trying to find my way home. Mira twirled her white hair in her right hand and played with it. Do you know who I am? Lu Yin shook his head. I'm from the Innerverse and I'm a member of the Universe Youth Council. Lu Yin's pupils shrank. The Universe Youth Council was a terrifying organization that could judge all the youths in the universe. It had a legal army, and the Great Yu Empire's Youth Council was one of its subordinate organizations. I was the one who disbanded the Great Yu Empire's Youth Council. Do you understand now? Mira continued. Lu Yin took a deep breath. What does that have to do with me? Mira stood up and slowly walked over to Lu Yin. She raised a hand and propped his chin up with her index finger, her entire body exuding an intoxicating aura. I admire you and I can recommend you to join the Outerverse Youth Council. The condition is that you join Astral 10 and show me some results. Lu Yin stared at Myra's eyes, the redness becoming more and more obvious. This woman made his entire body heat up and she was full of attraction. However, she also gave off an invisible and undetectable sense of danger that made his entire body turn cold. Why me? Myra's lips curled up into a beautiful smile that could steal souls. Her eyes, in particular, made Lu Yin feel like he was about to lose himself in them. Your innate gift is very unique. Can you tell me what it's used for? Lu Yin took a few steps back. Just because of my innate gift? Mira retracted her hand. Any cultivator with an innate gift can directly join the Universe Youth Council. This is the promise of the 10 Arbiters. But the Universe Youth Council is too large, and the Great Yu Empire's Youth Council is one of them. Ordinary cultivators with innate gifts can only join this level, and only those with extraordinary innate gifts can directly join the Universe Youth Council. Which category do you think you belong to? Lu Yin had never thought of using his innate gift to join the Universe Youth Council. His innate gift couldn't be revealed to others, not because it was too weak but because it was too powerful. His die had 6 pips and any roll would shock everyone. If possible, he didn't want to reveal his innate gift, but it had been seen during his battle with Qingyu. Sigmund Mathers hadn't asked much, but he definitely had his own guesses. My innate gift can only speed up my recovery, but it doesn't have much use for anything else, Lu Yin answered. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 67. Myra's eyes twinkled when she heard about his innate gift, but then she smiled. It's very simple. Do you need me to recommend you to the Great Yu Empire's Youth Council? Or rather, agree to my conditions and I'll recommend you directly to the Outerverse Youth Council. If I agree to your conditions, you'll be my referrer? Mira replied lazily. That's right. I'm your referrer, but you have to be able to do it. Not only do you have to join Astral 10, but you also have to do something that I, the Red Lotus Witchbow, can be proud of. She smiled at Lu Yin again, gave him a series of numbers and then turned to leave. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. Red Lotus Witchbow? Right, you were right to protect that native planet. Who knows, it might give birth to talents like Zhang Dingtian and Lu Xiaoga in the future. Treasure them well, Mira said before leaving. Lu Yin was shocked. He understood Zhang Dingtian, but why did she mention Lu Xiaoga? Lu Yin felt that it was a pity that he hadn't been able to kill Lu Xiaoga. Had Mira discovered something? Lu Yin immediately left and headed for the control room. The control room wasn't a place that just anyone could enter, but Lu Yin was unimpeded. His status on the Perseverance made him second only to Lulu and Mira. Even Sigmund couldn't compare to him in terms of status. Show me all the footage from the battle in India, Lu Yin ordered without hesitation. The people in the control room were stunned at first, but then they obeyed. At the same time, Sigmund, Tori, and Shalosh all received a message that Lu Yin had appeared in the control room. Sigmund was surprised but didn't pay much attention to it. He'd already told Lu Yin to do whatever he wanted as long as he didn't go overboard. Lu Yin carefully watched the footage and stared at Lu Xiaoga, his gaze gradually turning from surprise to fear. The holographic screen was playing the scene of him defeating Lu Xiaoge with his sky beast claw. This scene should have been very normal, but if one looked at the scene before the attack they would find some clues about Lu Xiaoge. Lu Xiaoge was deliberately injured by him. With his strength it was not that he did not have the ability to fight back, but he did not fight back. Moreover, it seemed that he was deliberately injured. Lu Xiaoge had sided with Qingyu and Qingyu had been injured in the final battle. If Lu Xiaoge hadn't been injured at all, what would Qingyu think of him? Even if he was called stupid, Lu Xiaoge had to show his loyalty, even if he'd had to take a blow that could kill him. That was Lu Xiaoge. Lu Yin's eyes were filled with apprehension. This person was ruthless to others but even more ruthless to himself. No wonder Mira praised Lu Xiaoge. This person was meticulous and could endure what others couldn't. He wouldn't stand out, nor would he be willing to be left out. Every move he made was just right and he would get injured when he needed to. This person's wisdom far surpassed Zhang Dingtian and Bai Shui. Lu Yin had a feeling that this person would not be weak no matter where he went. They would definitely cross paths in the future. Mira, Lu Yin. The people in the monitoring rooms stole glances at Lu Yin from time to time. During the trial they had seen Lu Yin capture so many students, including Roz and Jenny Anna. They had all thought that this person was dead for sure, but they had never imagined that he would suddenly become a prince of an empire. This experience was too miraculous and they had always been curious about Lu Yin. "Show me the surveillance footage of the Perseverance," Lu Yin said. A slightly older officer said awkwardly, "The surveillance on the Perseverance can only be viewed with the permission of the captain." "Don't make me repeat myself, I'm ordering you as King Zishan." The officer hesitated for a moment before gritting his teeth. "Play it." Screens immediately lit up around them, the scenes constantly changing. Lu Yin smirked. He wasn't interested in the surveillance footage. He just wanted to see if the title of King Zishan was useful, but it seemed that it was more useful than he'd thought. Just as he was about to leave, Su San's figure appeared on the screen. He was currently being beaten up. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold and he turned to leave. On the second floor of the residential district, a few students held onto Su San tightly. "You're just a native, don't think you're our equal just because you boarded the Perseverance. Natives will always be trash, got it?" Varen barked, eyes flashing with killing intent. Su San's face was bruised but he didn't speak. Varen snorted, "Let's go." Su San coughed and lowered his head, not daring to resist. Students passed by from time to time, but they didn't pay them any attention. Varen didn't go overboard and he didn't dare to do so out of consideration for Lu Yin's reputation. All he did was beat up a little because he didn't like the look of Lu Yin. All of a sudden a figure blocked his path. Varen looked up and saw Zhang Dingtian. "Frem." He barked. Zhang Dingtian unsheathed his sword and pointed it at Varen. "Apologize." Varen's expression changed but then he laughed. "Do you know where you are, country bumpkin? How dare you use your weapon? You're courting death." A group of soldiers appeared and surrounded Zhang Dingtian. "Put down your weapons, fighting is forbidden on the ship." Zhang Dingtian coldly replied, "Why didn't you stop them?" "I'll say it again, put down your weapons." Su San hurriedly ran to Zhang Dingtian's side. "I'm fine, let them go." Zhang Dingtian's eyes narrowed and he tightened his grip on his sword. More and more students came to watch the show, some of them excited. They were the unlucky ones who had been captured on Earth, so they were happy to see an Earthling in trouble. Xiao Luo suddenly appeared in front of Varen, his body weaving through the crowd and landing a knee strike on Varen's stomach. Varen screamed and retched, his body curling up in pain. This scene shocked everyone, including Zhang Dingtian. Xiao Luo turned around and smiled at Zhang Dingtian. "How was it?" Zhang Dingtian sheathed his sword. "Thank you." Xiao Luo looked at the soldiers. "Do what you can and you may leave." The soldiers gave Xiao Luo a deep look, then shot Zhang Dingtian a warning look before leaving. Varen coughed and glared at Xiao Luo, but he had no choice but to lower his head in the face of Xiao Luo's icy glare. "Let's go." Zhang Dingtian looked at Xiao Luo one more time, but didn't say anything and left as well. It was only after they had left that Lu Yin arrived. "Boss, he helped us," Su San told him. Lu Yin nodded. "Thank you, brother Xiao." Xiao Luo replied warmly, "You're welcome, I just didn't like the look of those people. I still have things to do, so I'll take my leave." Lu Yin thanked him again and watched as Xiao Luo left. Once he was gone, he turned to Zhou Xian. Why did they cause trouble for you? Zhou Xian shook his head. I don't know, I just came out to find something to eat and then they came. They said they didn't like the look of me. Lu Yin's eyes flashed. Did they not like the look of him? Varen definitely knew that Zhou Xian was one of his, but he still dared to make a move. A mere student wouldn't have the guts to provoke the Zishan king. So did that mean that the Great Yu Empire had already begun? They couldn't wait to deal with him. He was certain that his every move would be recorded and transmitted back to the capital star. Even the smallest detail would be magnified infinitely, implicating his personality, intelligence, kindness, and so on. These were all chips that could be used to attack him in the future. Varen was the first wave of people to provoke him, and there would be a second and third wave soon. They would only stop when they felt that they had enough. I heard something interesting happened, too bad I didn't get to see it, Silver said with a smile appearing out of nowhere. Lu Yin dismissed Zhou Xian and looked at Silver. What do you want to see? Silver smiled, looking at a certain person's conflicted expression. Was he being criticized for making a move? Or was he enduring being provoked again and again? How interesting. What kind of person do you think I am? He asked indifferently. Don't know, Silver replied casually. Lu Yin didn't have the time to argue with him. He had to go back and think about what his status as King Zishan was like in the Great Yu Empire. Don't you want to talk? I know quite a bit about the Zishan family, it might be helpful. Silver smiled at Lu Yin. Lu Yin turned back. What do you know? Silver shrugged. It's nothing. Just some old news from a few hundred years ago. For example, the Zishan family's old subordinates, the Zishan family's unique delicacies, the Zishan family's battle techniques, the marriage promise between the Zishan and Yushan families, and so on. Marriage? Lu Yin felt like he'd heard something incredible. What marriage? Speak clearly. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 68. Silver's lips curled up as he looked at Lu Yin enviously. You're so lucky, kid. You're enjoying the shade from your predecessors, huh? Lu Yin stared at Silver. Silver laughed for a while before saying, the Zishan family originally had two marriage promises. The first was the Ona family, which was set by the previous head of the Ona family and the Zishan family. The second was the Yushan family, which is also the imperial family of the Great Yu Empire. It was an agreement between Undying Deyu and Undying Zishan. Originally, these two marriage promises should have been fulfilled long ago, but Undying Zishan's death happened and dragged it out until now. Logically speaking, the Zishan family should have already been annihilated, so this promise should have naturally disappeared. However, you appeared and you're the only successor of the Zishan family. Lu Yin's brows twitched and he frowned. That promise from a few hundred years ago no longer counts. Silver sneered. A few hundred years ago? Is that a long time ago? Explorers usually live for more than 500 years. Do you know how long the Undying Dayu has been on the throne? 800 years. A promise from a few hundred years ago is like the first half of his life to him, so it's not that long ago. At least, aside from the Undying Zishan, everyone else who made that promise is still alive and well. Lu Yin muttered to himself, feeling a headache coming on. He had thought that the Undying Yushan was just an idle prince, but he hadn't expected him to be so troublesome. He even had a marriage agreement with the imperial family. Lu Yin understood that the Undying Yushan was an iron-blooded emperor who valued promises the most. Perhaps this marriage agreement would not be cancelled. That's not all you have to consider. The Zishan family once controlled nearly half of the Great Yu Empire's military power. Although they've been wiped out, many of their former subordinates are still alive, such as Sigmund Mathers. The Mathers family used to belong to the Zishan family. What else? Lu Yin asked. Silver rolled his eyes. There's a lot more, but why should I tell you? You've already said so much. What are your conditions? Tell me, Lu Yin said. Silver's lips curled up as he stared at Lu Yin. Did you pick something up? Lu Yin's eyes flashed. No. Silver replied, don't deny it. I can feel it. It's in your cosmic ring. Then tell me what it is, Lu Yin said indifferently. Silver smiled and shook his head. His smile was very creepy as he pointed at his eyes. Red. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. Yours. It's not a coincidence that we met for the first time. Although the things we're looking for are different, the locations are the same. Silver said. I can return it to you, Lu Yin said. Silver turned to look into the distance. No need. You can keep it. It'll be useful in the future. That kind of thing is useless to me. That's because you don't know what it means. You tried to assassinate Zhang Dingtian in the capital. Was it related to this? You really want to know? Silver looked at Lu Yin with a sly smile. The first time I met you I saw a corpse king. The second time I met you it was also a corpse king. You killed Zhang Dingtian and destroyed the firearms warehouse because Zhang Dingtian ordered us to use firearms to exterminate the corpse tide. What's your connection with a corpse king? Silver made a shushing gesture. Don't spout nonsense. How could I have anything to do with the zombie king? That's just a product of the planet's failed evolution trial. It has nothing to do with me. I'm just a porter at most. Lu Yin didn't understand. There were too many things in the universe that he couldn't understand. Student, we're actually the same type of people. I can feel it, which is why I came to you. Don't worry, I'll help you, Silver smiled. When I reach a certain position I'll help you instead? Lu Yin asked. Silver smiled. I told you that you're smart. It's a win-win situation. I don't even know who you are, so why should I work with you? Lu Yin sneered. Silver shrugged. You can refuse, but I believe that you'll be my best partner in the future. He then turned to leave, tossing a piece of paper to Lu Yin before he left. On it was a series of numbers, names of people in the Great Yu Empire and background information. The universe is cruel. Without you, Earth's future would be bleak. Think about Qingyu. Why didn't you kill him in the end? In the universe, you can only think about yourself. Silver's voice faded into the distance. Lu Yin sighed, looked at the paper and put it away. Lu Yin believed in the saying that one would never gain an advantage when making a deal with the devil. But who was the devil between him and Silver? Only the future could judge. What Lu Yin wanted to do now was cause a ruckus, the bigger the better. He had to understand the extent of his influence in the Great Yu Empire before he reached the capital star, or it would be difficult for him to do anything on the planet. If someone dared to make a move, then they had to be prepared to lose their hands. Bang! The door to the bar on the Perseverance shattered once more, attracting the attention of everyone inside. Ever since the students had returned from their trials, the door had never been safe. Lu Yin stepped into the bar and looked directly at Varen, who was sitting in a corner. Varen's expression changed when he saw Lu Yin, and he hurriedly stood up to flee. Lu Yin raised a hand and unleashed a space render palm, blasting away the students around him and shattering their tables and chairs. The next moment, a shockwave blasted towards Varen. Varen was shocked and raised a hand to block, but was smashed into the wall with a bang. He spat out a mouthful of blood as he gritted his teeth and glared at Lu Yin. No one dared to intervene, including the soldiers who happened to be patrolling the area. Everyone in the bar immediately retreated. On the second floor, Hua Xiaoling and Yan Gang walked out from a private room and looked down in astonishment. What was this guy up to again? Lu Yin slowly approached Varen, his gaze sinister. Varen stared at the approaching Lu Yin in fear, shouting, "What are you doing? This is a spacecraft, not a trial. You can't use force." Lu Yin grabbed Varen by the neck and lifted him over his head, his voice icy. "Who told you to cause trouble for my people? Speak." Varen's face flushed red. He was the strongest person in the academy, but he was powerless against Lu Yin in his current state. He didn't even want to fight back. "I don't know what you're talking about." Lu Yin sneered. "I know there's someone behind you and you must think that I wouldn't dare kill you. Well, I'll give it a try. The person behind you can't wait for me to kill you, so think carefully." Varen's expression changed. He had indeed been ordered to provoke Lu Yin, to show the capital star what kind of person King Zishan was. If Lu Yin killed him now, the results would be 1,000 times better than if he didn't. Not only would he be able to create a picture of the King Zishan's cruelty and stupidity, but his family would also be hostile towards the Zishan king. That person would definitely not save him. Varen thought it through and immediately said, I'll talk. Ross told me to provoke you." Lu Yin shrugged him off and left the bar. Yan Gang watched him disappear and sneered, "Idiot, it's obvious that someone's plotting against him and he still dares to cause trouble." Hua Xiaoling's eyes flashed as she activated her gadget to contact someone. At the same time, Sigmund, Tori and Shalosh all received the news. "What? He went to find Roz? Stop him." Sigmund roared, his heart stifled. Idiot, too idiotic, how could he do something like this at a time like this? Xianxia sneered, he's worse than I thought. Did the title of King Zishan make him arrogant? Poor country bumpkin. Tori shook his head in disappointment. Miss can't marry such a person. Ignoring what others thought, Lu Yin had already arrived outside Ra's room and destroyed the surveillance camera in the corner with a flick of his finger before kicking out. Ra seemed to have been waiting for him and smiled disdainfully, but on the surface he spoke respectfully. What orders do you have for me, King Zishan? Without another word, Lu Yin stepped forward and kicked out. Ra hadn't expected Lu Yin to be so crazy and instinctively tried to dodge, but he was met with the Sky Beast Claw. The seventh form of the Sky Beast Claw was far more powerful than the fifth, and Ra couldn't avoid it at all. He was sent flying out of the room and smashed into the metal frame of the spacecraft, coughing up blood as he roared, "How dare you hurt me, native!" Lu Yin reached out to grab Ra, who roared and pulled out an energy gun from his cosmic ring. Lu Yin easily dodged the attack. Although it could injure sentinels, it was only effective against ordinary sentinels. Lu Yin's current power level was a realm breaker, comparable to a melder. Seeing Lu Yin getting closer, Ra's expression changed. Save me. Just as Lu Yin was about to attack Ra's, Munor appeared and sent shockwaves flying. Lu Yin took a dozen steps back and stared at his opponent solemnly. Munor also took a few steps back, staring fixedly at Lu Yin. New Year's Day tomorrow. Thank you for your support, thank you. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 69. At this point, Sigmund, Xianxia and Tori Anna arrived as well. General Mathers, he's trying to kill me, he's trying to kill me. Ra shouted angrily. Sigmund looked helplessly at Lu Yin. Why did you kill him? Lu Yin stared at him coldly. I didn't. How dare you deny it in front of so many people? Evidence. Lu Yin scoffed. Ra and the rest looked up at the monitor, only to find that it had long since been destroyed. Ra immediately wanted to remove his gadget, recording the moment he'd learned of Lu Yin's arrival to serve as evidence for the people behind him. However, his face paled as his gadget had been destroyed at some point. Lu Yin was disdainful. He wasn't an idiot, and even if he wanted to probe, he couldn't go overboard. He needed a good reason. These were the rules, and no matter what he did, he couldn't break them unless he was strong enough. Xianxia glared at Ra, inwardly calling him a piece of trash. Ra pointed angrily at Lu Yin. It's you, you're the one who injured me. Munor saw it too, right? I saw it, Munor hurriedly replied. If I hadn't intervened, Mr. Ra would have been killed. Lu Yin sneered. Only an idiot would believe the testimony of two losers. Munor was furious. Sigmund secretly sighed in relief and stared coldly at Ra. Do you have any more evidence? Ra's expression changed, but then he angrily replied, This is my room, he attacked me in my room. This is the evidence. Everyone looked at Lu Yin. Lu Yin took out the gadget he'd been keeping in his pocket all this time and opened the screen, revealing Varen's confession. This person bribed Varen to deal with me, so it's not unreasonable for me to settle the score with him. Everyone fell silent, and even Ra couldn't refute it. He'd been beaten up for nothing, and if news of this spread back to the capital star, not only would the people there not blame Lu Yin, they would even praise him for not acting rashly and acting reasonably. Ra, on the other hand, was the exact opposite. Sigmund spoke up. Now that things are clear, let's disperse. Wait, Lu Yin said. Sigmund looked at Lu Yin. Do you have any other requests? Lu Yin's gaze swept across the crowd before finally settling on Xianxia. What I want to say is that even though I'm from a remote, primitive planet, I'm not someone to be trifled with. Some people better keep their claws to themselves or I'll chop them up sooner or later. Xianxia's gaze was cold as he stared at Lu Yin. Lu Yin stared at him as well. An explorer wasn't someone that a newly appointed prince like him could deal with. Furthermore, this person was a member of the 13 Imperial Squadrons, so it didn't matter if Lu Yin's status was higher than his. However, a warning was still necessary as this was a test. Lu Yin wanted to see how the Emperor of the Great Yu Empire would react after this incident blew up. This would depend on how the Emperor would act in the Great Yu Empire in the future. Soon, the crowd dispersed and Ra was taken away for treatment. Shalosh did not say a word from beginning to end. Sigmund didn't say much either, as if the matter was settled. The Perseverance continued to sail through the dark universe. A few hours later, a punishment was announced. Student Raz of U Academy has disobeyed the rules and defied his superiors. He will be demoted to a soldier during the return voyage as a warning to others. Everyone was shaken by the news, and Lu Yin's figure immediately appeared in their minds. This King Zishan was not simple at all. Lu Yin was shocked as well. The empire valued him more than he had imagined. The son of a finance minister was demoted just like that, and the entire crew was notified without mercy. It seemed like he would have to adjust his style in the future. Shalosh's face darkened as he clenched his right fist. He was the one behind Raz, so the blame would definitely fall on him. Because of Raz's incident, the Perseverance quieted down considerably and no one dared to cause trouble. A day later, while Lu Yin was observing the star charts, a middle-aged man in the Empire's military uniform requested an audience. Adjutant General Mathers greets King Zishan. The man bowed solemnly. The Great Yu Empire didn't kneel. The military saluted while the imperial court only needed to bow. Lu Yin smiled. Hello, how should I address you? You can call me Adjutant, that's what everyone on the Perseverance calls me. Lu Yin nodded. Don't call me King Zishan either, it's awkward. Just call me Lu Yin or Student Lu. The adjutant replied, Yes, the general sent me here to brief you on the Empire's situation. We'll reach the capital star in half a month. Lu Yin gestured for the man to enter. The adjutant unfurled a star chart. The Great Yu Empire has 13 filaments, and it's located in the center of Frostwave Weave. The north and south are connected in a straight line across Frostwave Weave, almost splitting it into two. It also connects Grand Top Weave and the Endless Chaos. Lu Yin had learned a little about the Great Yu Empire over the past few days, and it was similar to what the adjutant had told him. He was curious about the capital star, but the Great Yu Empire was so vast that it was impossible for him to understand it in detail. He only wanted to know his destination, which was the capital star. However, the description of the capital star in his gadget wasn't very detailed. He only knew that it was called Xenu Star and it was 10,000 times the size of Earth. It was surrounded by 3 continents, but there was nothing more specific. The adjutant pointed to a location on the star chart. This is where Xenu Star is located. The 3 continents around Xenu Star are where the Empire's troops are stationed. From the inside out, they are called the First Ring, Second Ring, and Third Ring. As he listened to the adjutant's introduction, an image of a huge habitable planet appeared in Lu Yin's mind. It was surrounded by an iron-blooded army that dominated the 13 filaments. After a long time, the adjutant put away the star chart. Is there anything else you want to ask? I want to know about the Imperial Palace and the 13 Imperial Squadrons. I'm sorry, I can't reveal that with my authority. If you want to know, you'll have to ask General Mathers. Lu Yin felt that it was a pity. How long did you say it would take to reach the capital star? Half a month, said the adjutant. That's too slow, Lu Yin said helplessly. That's the speed of a normal spacecraft, and that's only because our empire has spread wormholes all over the 13 filaments. A single wormhole can often cover an endless distance. Otherwise, if we just relied on a spacecraft to fly, we wouldn't be able to reach the capital star even if it took 100 or even 1,000 times longer. Speaking of this, Lu Yin recalled that his family had once told him about a type of spacecraft called the Aurora. It could increase a spacecraft's performance by decomposing matter. In theory, such a spacecraft could be upgraded without limit, and it was rumored that the best Aurora could tear apart black holes and defend against attacks from powerhouses. It was also 100 or even 1,000 times faster than a normal spacecraft. That was a man's dream. Unfortunately, such a spacecraft was extremely expensive and it wasn't something he could afford. All right, thank you, Adjutant, Lu Yin said to the man. The adjutant bowed once more before turning to leave. Lu Yin looked at the star chart and narrowed his eyes. Looking at the overall situation, the Great Yu Empire's territory was like a sharp sword that pointed straight at the Innerverse. Streaks of light streaked across the dark sky. They might have been meteorites, but they might also have been star energy attacks from powerhouses. A spacecraft was cruising through space, speeding into the distance. Qingyu stood at the highest point of the spacecraft and looked at the stars, swirling the wine in his cup. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Right, I remember now, it's Starsabil's invitation. It's a pity that I forgot about it. Young master. Lu Xiaoge came to Qingyu's side and respectfully greeted him. Qingyu glanced at him. Remember not to raise your head or look around when you get back. Otherwise, anyone can kill you instantly. Yes, young master, Lu Xiaoge replied respectfully. Of course you can't let anyone bully you either. After all, I'm the one who brought you here and I'm the Night King. Lu Xiaoge hurriedly acknowledged. Qingyu was very satisfied with Lu Xiaoge's attitude, as it was precisely because of this attitude that he was willing to bring this native along. However, this person's surname was rather troublesome, as it was a primeval surname. Fortunately, that native planet had been monitored by the Great Yu Empire for a long time, so it could be considered a legal identity. Speaking of which, I should be thanking you. Without you, I wouldn't have been able to wake up from my slumber. Lu Xiaoge's eyes flashed. Young master, it's your luck that allowed you to awaken as a Night King. The future will definitely belong to you. Qingyu's lips curled up. Well said, ha. When I officially inherit the title of Night King, I'll go to that native planet again and slaughter that bunch of trash. At that time you'll have returned home in glory. Thank you, young master. Lu Xiaoge lowered his head even more, but his eyes shone brighter than the stars. Happy New Year to all my brothers and sisters. Third update at 2 p.m. Thank you for your support. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 70. The Perseverance has arrived at Gunma Space Station. Students, please prepare your belongings and land in an orderly manner. Lu Yin stood in front of the window and looked down. Gunma Space Station was very far away from the solar system, and this was where the Perseverance had made its first wormhole jump. To most people, Gunma Space Station was very ordinary, but to people like Zhang Dingtian and Zhou Xian who were stepping into space for the first time, it was extremely shocking. Gunma Space Station was huge, thousands of times larger than the Perseverance. It was made entirely of unknown metal components, floating in space with flying machines everywhere. At first glance, it looked like a giant metal monster baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Behind Gunma's space station was a protective net formed by countless spacecraft. Even though they were separated by a great distance, Zhang Dingtian could still feel the shocking fluctuations of star energy emanating from them. These were space-exploring powerhouses. Within this space station there was a space-exploring powerhouse. The Perseverance was placed on top of a giant frame, and below it, beams of light descended to reveal students one after another. Most of the students didn't need to go to the capital star. They came from all over the Great Yu Empire and needed to transfer stations. There were more than 20 students who had landed on Gunma Space Station, and they were visibly more relaxed after leaving the Perseverance. Geraldine was one of them. She had finally left Lu Yin. Before leaving, she turned back to look at the Perseverance and saw Lu Yin waving at her. She rolled her eyes and muttered something that obviously wasn't anything nice. Lu Yin's brows rose. This girl was asking for a beating. Other than Geraldine, Varen, Parlai, and the rest left as well, their academies weren't too far apart. What surprised him was that Silver had left as well. Lu Yin stared at Silver's back, deep in thought. This person was hard to fathom. Cooperate? Let's see who can outplay who, but before that he had to figure out the power behind Silver. A silhouette tore through the sky. It was Sigmund. Lu Yin glanced at the universe and then continued to observe the star chart. It was only when he was in the universe that he truly felt its vastness. He was confident that he would be able to revolve the fifth star within a month. Just how powerful would he be then? Normally, an additional star would double one's power. Lu Yin had suppressed the Sentinel Qingyu with 4 stars, making him invincible. With 5 stars he might be able to challenge a melder from Yu Academy, and even someone like Munor might not be his match. The head of the Gunma space station was named Baruda. He was an explorer with a combat power of over 10,000. He could wander the starry sky and had guarded the Gunma space station for more than 200 years. A space station master like Baruda did not need to personally oversee the wormhole, but Baruda was different. He had personally guarded the wormhole for over 200 years, and his name had spread throughout the Great Yu Empire. Sigmund crossed the distance and appeared behind the space station, gazing at the huge wormhole before looking at the dense net of spacecrafts not far away. Right in the middle was Baruda's spacecrafts. The door opened with a creak and a middle-aged man in armor stepped out. He crossed several thousand meters in a single step and appeared in front of Sigmund, commander of Gunma Space Station. Baruda, greetings, General Sigmund. Sigmund was very respectful of the man before him. Station Master Baruda, it's been 13 years since we last met. How have you been? Baruda solemnly replied, there have been no enemy invasions in 13 years. Good. His Majesty has mentioned you many times. Thank you for guarding the borders of the Great Yu Empire. Baruda immediately saluted. This subordinate is a soldier of the Empire and guarding the borders is my duty. You should have been notified that a planet called Earth has just undergone an evolution. I'll have to trouble Station Master Baruda to monitor it closely and send people to eliminate the failed products as soon as possible to prevent enemies from sneaking in. Baruda's eyes trembled. The Neo-Human Alliance. Sigmund nodded and looked in the direction of Earth. The failed zombies must not be discovered by the Neo-Human Alliance. Even if a zombie king is taken away, it will be troublesome for the Great Yu Empire. You should understand the severity of this matter. Baruda trembled. This subordinate understands. Immediately send troops to Earth to eliminate the zombie horde. Also, do not harm that planet while eliminating the zombie horde. That planet belongs to King Zhou Xian for the time being. Baruda acknowledged the order and immediately left. Not long after, the Perseverance started up again and took off towards the wormhole behind the space station. The moment they entered the wormhole, everyone felt weightless, but it was only for a moment. The next moment, everything returned to normal. The only difference was that the surrounding starry sky had changed. They had appeared in another galaxy's space station from Gunma Space Station, and they had left without stopping. Zhou Xian exhaled. The moment he entered the wormhole had terrified him. Not everyone dared to look into the depths of the darkness. The wormhole spanned a considerable distance, and they had already crossed from the solar system's domain to another. The smallest unit of measurement in the universe was a galaxy, followed by a cluster of galaxies. Every cluster contained many galaxies, and even more expansive were superclusters, each of which contained many galaxies. Then came the domain. Generally speaking, the largest organizations in the universe used domains as a unit of measurement. A domain had many superclusters and it was infinitely large. The Great Yu Empire encompassed 13 domains, and these 13 domains almost divided the Frostwave Weave into two. There were 72 weaves in the entire Outerverse and Frostwave Weave was only one of them. On average, each weave had 100 filaments. In other words, the Great Yu Empire's territory was equivalent to a tenth of Frostwave Weave, as Frostwave Weave had a total of 125 filaments. The solar system was in the fourth domain, and the Perseverance had just crossed from the fourth to the third. They were heading to the first domain where the capital star was located. It was also the heart of the Great Yu Empire. After a group of students left, the training area became much more spacious. Lu Yin arrived at the training area and saw many familiar faces, but most of them avoided him like he was the plague. He didn't care as he had no intention of getting along with anyone. Once his identity as King Zhou Xian was confirmed, there would be people looking for trouble. He could foresee that he would be hated by everyone in the Great Yu Empire, but that didn't matter. His identity was fake and all he needed was power to influence a domain in the future. Of course, that wasn't possible right now. The training area simulated many environments and it was quite large. Lu Yin wandered over to the gravity room, finding it a good place to train his body. There were over 100 gravity training rooms in the gravity training area. Each gravity training room was very large and could accommodate more than one person. They were all open. Lu Yin found an empty room and increased the gravity to 6 times, warming up for a bit before increasing it again. Gradually his body grew heavier and the pressure on his organs increased. When the gravity reached 30 times normal, he was covered in sweat. This was the limit of a sentinel's body. Most sentinels could only withstand 30 times normal gravity. Alright, let's train, Lu Yin muttered to himself, starting a simple training session. It was just some basic movements, but they were very effective. He relied on these movements to train his body to the point where he could use the shockwave palm without star energy. As his battle techniques grew stronger, the effects of the shockwave palm and space render palm weren't that great, but he didn't want to give up on them. Without star crystals, he had to strengthen them as quickly as possible. Outside the gravity room, the students stared at the numbers in shock. 30 times the gravity? Which senior is training? Is it Senior Munoer or Yen Gang? Or Wu Shaoling? Someone guessed. Maybe it's a veteran. There are melders among the soldiers. It's most likely the soldiers. They can't absorb star crystals, so they can only train their bodies. I've heard that many sentinels have the strength of a melder's body. They're just a bunch of trash. What's the point of having strong bodies? They're just war slaves. Not far away, a few soldiers had ugly expressions, but they didn't retort. They were all from trial planets, and it wasn't easy for them to be selected to enter the Perseverance. However, they didn't qualify for the Great Yu Empire to remodel their bodies. All right, we just need to know who opened the door, one student said impatiently. Someone else immediately tried to persuade him. You'll be in trouble if you disturb their training. 30 times the gravity is very likely to be a melder. Are you sure you can handle it? The student's expression changed, but he didn't step forward. Happy New Year to all my brothers and sisters. Third update at 2 p.m. Thanks for your support. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 71. At this moment, the door to a gravity room opened and Jenny Anna walked out. Curious about the situation, she opened the door and saw Lu Yin right away. Her expression turned ugly, and she glared at him before slamming the door and leaving. The students around them were stunned. What was going on? Lu Yin blinked. What was going on? Was this woman crazy? Why did she look like that when she saw him? Wasn't it just a threat? Did she know about the marriage between the Anna and Zhou Xian families? Lu Yin's guess was right. Jenny Anna did know about it, but Tori Anna had accidentally revealed it. Although the marriage between the Anna and Zhou Xian families had not been named, even an idiot would know that it had to be the heir. The Zhou Xian family had been much more prosperous than the Anna family back in the day, and now Lu Yin was the only surviving member of the Zhou Xian family. As for the Anna family, Jenny Anna would be the one to marry Lu Yin as long as the marriage was carried out. Jenny Anna didn't have a good impression of Lu Yin to begin with, and she immediately contacted her family after learning of this matter. The answer she received made her heart turn cold. This marriage was very likely to be carried out. Jenny Anna instantly felt her entire life turn dark, which was why she had come to the gravity room to vent her frustrations. She hadn't expected to run into that bastard again. She felt like she had stepped in dog shit. Not long after Jenny Anna left, Lulu Mavis happily ran over and entered Lu Yin's gravity room. Lu Yin looked over in surprise. Lulu Mavis? Just in time. My hands are itching, let's spar, Lulu provoked. Lu Yin didn't refuse. He was curious about the Mavis family's battle techniques. Lulu had displayed terrifying strength and extreme speed in the capital, and he wanted to know if that strength was a battle technique or something else. If it was a battle technique, he wondered if he could secretly learn it. Lulu licked her lips excitedly when Lu Yin didn't refuse. She had been paying attention to him for a long time, and it wasn't easy for him to defeat a Night King, even if he had just awakened. Don't hold back, I want to see what you got from the inheritance stone. I'm coming, watch out. Lulu's body vanished. She was able to maintain such a terrifying speed even in 30 times the gravity, leaving only an afterimage behind as if she had merged into the day. Lu Yin immediately activated his serious art, but Lulu's palm was still fast enough to break through the limits of serious. Lu Yin dodged to the side, but Lulu's palm slammed into the wall, shaking the room. Lulu stared at Lu Yin in surprise. Not bad. Again. As she spoke, she charged at 30 times gravity as if it was nothing to her. Lu Yin stared intently at Lulu's incoming fist. He raised his own hand and punched out, the day-night punch alternating between black and white. Within the gravity room, Lulu was shocked. This is the battle technique you learned from the inheritance stone? It's nothing special. Lu Yin clenched his fists and stared at Lulu in shock. Aside from her speed, she hadn't used any battle techniques in that punch. She'd relied purely on brute force to block the day-night punch. Could it be that the Mavis family's innate gift was brute force? Continue. Lulu shouted, increasing her speed and sweeping her leg towards Lu Yin. He dodged again, keeping a close eye on Lulu's legs. The next moment, Lulu disappeared again and attacked him from all directions. Lu Yin couldn't learn extreme speed from Qingyu, but he could see some clues from Lulu's display of it. His feet unconsciously imitated Lulu's footwork and gradually brought it into the roving step. His speed increased slightly, but only slightly. Just as he had guessed, the Day-Night clan's battle techniques had a unique rhythm that couldn't be learned outside of the Legacy Stone. Even if he imitated them, there was a limit to it. Lulu landed with a backflip and stared at Lu Yin in shock. "You were imitating my white flash, weren't you?" Lu Yin nodded. "I couldn't." Lulu laughed. "You were actually imitating the white flash, and a little at that. Interesting, you're an interesting person." Lu Yin was confused. "Is that strange?" Lulu smiled. "Of course it's strange. It's common knowledge that a race's battle techniques can't be imitated. Many races' battle techniques need to be passed down in a specific environment, and even powerful techniques can't be successfully imitated. This is the foundation of the great clans in the universe, but you were able to imitate it a little. You're a strange fellow. Not only did you inherit the Day-Night clan's battle technique, you even imitated the white flash." "Huh?" Lu Yin didn't understand what was so funny. "Are you still going to continue?" "Yes, continue. But 30 times the gravity is too low, how about we raise it a little?" Lulu suggested slyly. Lu Yin raised an eyebrow. "Sure, how much?" Lulu Mavis thought for a moment and stretched out 4 fingers. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. 40 times? How ruthless! He believed that even an elite sentinel like Roz wouldn't be able to withstand 40 times the gravity. Was this woman testing him? Very quickly he adjusted the gravity to 40 times. His body immediately sank, his legs feeling like they were filled with lead. The terrifying pressure almost made him unable to make a sound. This was a gravity that only a melder's body could withstand, and he was barely able to withstand it. Across from him, Lulu's expression was ugly, but she stubbornly stared at him and gestured. Lu Yin found it strange. "Are you having a hard time as well?" "Of course not." Lulu gritted her teeth. Lu Yin was speechless. He could tell that this brat was forcing herself to endure 40 times the gravity, but she was still acting as if nothing had happened. At that moment the door opened and Xiao Luo walked in smiling. "How about I join in?" Lulu Mavis pouted. "Shameless melder." Xiao Luo laughed. "I won't use any battle techniques and I won't attack first." Lu Yin shrugged. "It doesn't matter, it's just training anyway. Let's begin." He then attacked Xiao Luo at the same time as if they had agreed. Xiao Luo easily dodged the attacks. 40 times the gravity wasn't difficult for him as he was a melder. After a while the two couldn't even touch his clothes. Lulu grew anxious. "Hey, are you here to mock us?" Xiao Luo raised one leg to block Lu Yin's sky beast claw and lashed out with the other. "I'll go easy on you." Lulu snorted and clenched her right fist so tightly that the air trembled. Lu Yin subconsciously retreated, but there was a muffled sound as Xiao Luo was forced back a step. "What strength!" Lulu was pleased with herself and blew on her fist, looking at Xiao Luo provocatively. "If you want to fight, seal your cultivation first." Xiao Luo smirked. "All right, wait for me." He then left the gravity room. The Perseverance passed through the wormhole once more and entered the second filament. There were less than 10 days until they reached the capital star. Lu Yin, Lulu and Xiao Luo sparred frequently in the gravity room, having fought more than 100 times over the past 5 days. Lulu was a battle maniac and those with great strength tended to have violent tendencies. Lu Yin wasn't surprised that she liked to fight, but he was surprised that Xiao Luo would rather seal his cultivation to fight them. This sort of battle shouldn't be of much use to him, but Lu Yin felt comfortable with him nonetheless. On the 6th day another person joined them, Zhang Dingtian. He usually trained in a gravity room far away from the rest, but had accidentally bumped into Lu Yin and decided to come here. Lu Yin had always thought that Zhang Dingtian was a monster, but even so he hadn't expected him to be able to withstand 40 times the gravity. His skin had cracked and blood had splashed everywhere, but he hadn't retreated. As an earthling he had no combat skills, yet he was able to suppress the strongest of Parlai and the other academies. His strength was enough to fight Roz and he was one of the rare realm breakers. Even Sigmund Mathers had praised him, saying that he could make an exception and join the 13 Imperial squadrons. Xiao Luo admired Zhang Dingtian, even leaving Lu Yin and Lulu behind to personally spar with him. This was very beneficial to Zhang Dingtian, as Xiao Luo had been guiding him to develop his own battle techniques. Over the next 2 days another person joined the group. It was Zhou, the ascetic monk from Earth. When he first appeared, Lulu was so frightened that she hid behind Lu Yin. It was obvious how intimidating his appearance was. He gave off the feeling of an otherworldly expert and normal people would not dare to make a move against him. Zhou couldn't withstand 40 times the normal gravity, so he simply opened the door and stepped in with one foot. Once he got used to the gravity he stepped in with the other foot. This left everyone speechless and the door to the gravity training room was always left ajar. Because of Zhou's appearance, many people came to watch every day. It was quite attractive. Happy New Year to all my brothers and sisters. Thank you for your support. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 72. Zhou Xian was there as well, having been dragged along by Lu Yin to bring them water and drinks. Zhou Xian didn't get tired of it, feeling like he was still of some use. Quite a few students passed by and looked at the gravity rooms strangely. Even the strongest students of the various academies might not be able to fight in 40 times gravity. Another group of students left, this time with Zhou, Ballerer, Eddie and Hayden. With them gone, Lu Yin was left with fewer students. Zhou purposely found him before leaving and raised her fist. You better watch out, I haven't settled the score for robbing me. Want to do it again? Lu Yin asked proudly. Zhou quickly ran away in fright, but before she left she tried to scare him once more. Don't underestimate you Academy, there won't be any sentinels fighting you anymore. Your opponents are melders, my brother might beat you up. She then ran off. Lu Yin burst into laughter as he recalled someone's introduction of her brother Zhou, and his expression turned serious. Someone at Zhou's level was an elite of Yu Academy, someone who had even joined the 13 Imperial Squadrons. Although Lu Yin's status was high, he might not be able to intimidate someone like that. He still had to work hard and only by becoming a melder would he have the ability to protect himself. Although there were no specific rules, it was rumored that the Astral Combat Academy only recruited young elites above the melder realm. Just as he was about to rush back to the training area, he saw Bai Shui looking up at the starry sky. With the starry sky as a backdrop, Bai Shui's beautiful side profile shocked him, almost glowing. He wasn't the only one. Many students around him were also attracted to her, staring at her with burning gazes. Bai Shui was already used to such gazes. Whether on Earth or in the universe, they would never disappear. Lu Yin walked over to her. What are you thinking about? Why don't you train with us? The universe is huge and Earth is too small. No wonder it can't hold people back. Didn't you get out yourself? Don't worry about Lu Xiaoge, Lu Yin said. Bai Shui shook her head. I'm not talking about him. Who else? Lu Yin was puzzled. Bai Shui turned to look at him. Qingyu, who discovered it? A thought suddenly flashed through Lu Yin's mind and he blurted out, Bai Qian. Bai Shui's eyes dimmed. That's right, Bai Qian. Lu Yin had always felt that something was missing. It was Bai Qian, the person who had first stepped onto Neptune and brought Qingyu back. He had also been the first person to come into contact with Qingyu, but he had never been one of the 7 sages. Bai Qian had been the first human to set foot on Neptune and was an absolute elite of the human race, but there had never been any news about him. Where is this person? What does that have to do with you? Bai Shui bitterly replied, She's my sister. Lu Yin was shocked. Bai Qian is a girl? Bai Shui nodded. She couldn't help but laugh when she saw Lu Yin's shocked expression. Isn't it unbelievable? All the major newspapers have been reporting on Bai Qian's arrival on Neptune, but they've completely hidden her personal information. In your mind, Bai Qian must be a man as domineering as Zhang Dingtian, right? Lu Yin smiled bitterly and nodded. That's exactly what I thought. Since you mentioned her, what happened to her? Did she leave Earth? Bai Shui lowered her head, her long hair covering her eyes as she spoke in a low voice. My sister, Bai Qian, is said to have a face that can make a rainbow pale in comparison, a strategist like Zhuge Liang, a heart like an empress and a genius in the way of the sword. But she abandoned me, abandoned Earth and went to the stars alone. I might never see her again. She went to the stars? How did she leave? Lu Yin was puzzled. When Qingyu was brought back, he had a piece of leather paper with words engraved on it. It took us a long time to decipher it, but we only managed to decipher 3 words. Invitation. It was this invitation that opened the door to the stars for my sister. She then disappeared. At the time she had just entered the realm of sky, which is the same as the Sentinel realm. Your sister has guts, daring to step into the stars with just an invitation. Isn't she afraid of being torn apart by spacetime? Lu Yin exclaimed. Bai Shui gazed into the dark universe and spoke with longing. My sister never did anything she wasn't confident in. Whether it was her studies, sports, the way of the sword, or exploring the stars, she was the best. Zhang Dingtian and the others had to admit that no one could compare to her. Perhaps that was why she left. Earth could no longer satisfy her. Lu Yin laughed. This woman worshipped Bai Qian too much. Bai Qian might have been able to shine on Earth, but that might not be the case in the stars. The universe was vast and boundless, and humans were divided into many different races. Just like Parley's planet of third gravity and Balor's planet of plants, some races were born with sentinels or even stronger than that. The Day-Night clan was already terrifying, and the Night King clan was the king of the Day-Night clan. Their talents and resources were limitless, and any elite would pale in comparison to them. Lu Yin was confident that he could compete with these monsters because of his dai. But what about Bai Qian? Bai Shui was right about one thing. She might never see Bai Qian again in this lifetime. Most people couldn't cross the stars. A face that can make a rainbow pale in comparison? It was a pity that he couldn't meet her. Alright, do you have a picture of your sister? Lu Yin asked, wanting to take a look. Bai Shui shook her head. There's a rule against keeping pictures. She glared at Lu Yin like he was a thief. What are you trying to do? Just taking a look. If you don't have it, then forget it. Train with us when you're free. It's easy to get sick by yourself. Lu Yin said indifferently before turning to leave. Bai Shui retracted her gaze and looked into the dark universe again with a complicated expression. Earth was truly miraculous. Qingyu alone had brought out a group of monsters from a single trial. Zhang Dingtian was a realm breaker. Bai Shui and Zhou Xian were innate talents. Saruzin had unparalleled willpower, Lu Xiaoge's fortitude, and the perfect Bai Qian. Lu Yin didn't know what this group of people would experience in space, but the future would definitely be interesting. That's right, I'm also from Earth. Lu Yin smirked. Am I considered a monster? The Perseverance was peaceful for the next 10 days. The students left one after another, and Bai Shui joined the combat training. She couldn't withstand 40 times the gravity and had no choice but to copy Saruzin's method. However, she was different from Saruzin. One was breathtakingly beautiful while the other was nightmarish. The two polar opposites stood at the entrance of the gravity training room, leaving Lu Yin speechless. Zhou Xian looked at Bai Shui with a strange gaze, feeling that she must have been provoked. Why else would she copy Saruzin and try to adapt to 40 times the gravity? In 10 days, Lu Yin had completely adapted to 40 times the normal gravity, which surprised Xia Luo. Most people who had just broken through to the Melder realm wouldn't be able to adapt so easily, but Lulu Mavis had adapted even faster than Lu Yin. No one was surprised by her. Anything was possible in the Mavis family. Zhang Dingtian could also move freely under 40 times the gravity. Saruzin had spent 10 days and finally advanced by one leg. This was normal. A sentinel being able to adapt to 40 times the gravity was already an exaggeration. Bai Shui was the same, and her improvement was even faster than Saruzin's. This gravity training room was very famous on the Perseverance, and even Sigmund had come to take a look. Aside from Zhou Xian, everyone else could defeat the strongest in the academy. It was hard not to attract attention. At that moment, Lu Yin received a message from his adjutant that the Great Yu Empire's evolutionary trial had ended. Careful, I'm coming. Lulu shouted, her palm brushing past his ear and hitting the wall. She then stopped and looked at him with dissatisfaction. Hey, can you show some respect? I was hitting you. He apologized. Sorry, I got distracted. I just received news that the students who pass this trial will be sent to the capital star for an assessment. Those who pass will be recommended to Astral 10 by the Empire. Lulu rolled her eyes. What does that have to do with me? Xia Luo didn't mind. It was only then that he remembered that these two weren't simple. Lulu was from the Mavis family, which wasn't any weaker than the Day-Night clan. He wasn't surprised that she could enter the inheritance stone and obtain it, but Xia Luo's background wasn't simple either. The Great Yu Empire's recommendation was useless to them. So we're the losers? Zhang Dingtian asked Lu Yin. Lu Yin nodded. Everyone failed Earth's trial. Aside from me, no one can be recommended to Astral 10. I don't need a recommendation, I can go myself, Zhang Dingtian said. Lulu rolled her eyes. Go yourself? Are you kidding? You don't even know where the Astral Combat Academy's gates are. Do you think anyone can go there? Astral 10 has descended upon the Frostwave Weave, and only a power like the Great Yu Empire knows its exact location. They have a way to get close and normal people won't even be able to see it. Zhang Dingtian's gaze was heavy as he gripped his sword tightly. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 73. Lu Yin looked at Lulu. Do you know about the Astral Combat Academy? I've heard about it from my elders. Do you want to know? Lulu smiled slyly. Lu Yin nodded. Yes. Lulu's eyes darted around. I can tell you, but you have to promise me one thing. As long as you join Astral 10, help me get something. Lu Yin turned to leave. Hey, don't go. It's not like it's anything special. It's just a fight. Let me tell you, even General Mathers doesn't know about the Astral Combat Academy. Besides me, no one else can tell you. The Astral Combat Academy is split into 10 academies. 8 of them are in the Innerverse and Astral 9 is in the Endless Weave. Astral 10 is about to descend on the Frostwave Weave. The Astral Combat Academy is said to have supreme battle techniques that have been passed down since ancient times, and there are invincible powerhouses overseeing it. The Astral Combat rankings are composed of the top 100 youths in the universe. To everyone in the universe, the most attractive thing about the Astral Combat Academy is that only those who join will have the right to enter the legendary 3 realms and 6 daos. Lulu gritted her teeth in anger. Everyone stared at Xiao Luo. The 3 realms and 6 daos. Xiao Luo smiled. The legendary 9 trial zones. Rumor has it that these zones have been passed down since ancient times and contain supreme battle techniques. There are techniques that allow living beings to live forever, immortal bloodlines and invincible strength. Of course, these are just rumors, but one thing has been confirmed. Xiao Luo grew solemn. Almost half of the 10 arbiters of the Universe Youth Council have stepped into the 3 realms and 6 daos, which has even shocked the Astral Combat Academy. Lu Yin's expression changed. The 10 arbiters had developed the Universe Youth Council from an obscure organization into the terrifying monster it was today. The 10 of them were geniuses who stood above the universe's younger generation. Lu Yin did not understand their strength, but there had once been a huge power that had defied the 10 arbiters' orders and been exterminated by one of them. That power far surpassed the Great Yu Empire. The Universe Youth Council was originally only responsible for the Innerverse tournament and rewarding and punishing the younger generation. Ever since the 10 arbiters had ascended to the throne, their authority had expanded infinitely. Not only did they have the authority to arbitrate and judge the younger generation, but they also had the authority to supervise the academies, education, the military and prisons. They also had the authority to directly enforce laws. This was why the Universe Youth Council was called the 10 Arbiters Council. Mira was from the 10 Arbiters Council, and through her he could see how terrifying this organization was. Lu Yin had gone out of his way to investigate the 10 arbiters, but he had not been able to find any information about them. Their information had been concealed, or rather he had not been able to find any information about them with the Outerverse qualifications. Lulu snorted. Some of those 10 freaks have indeed stepped into the 3 realms and 6 daos, but not all of them have gained anything from it. However, there's one thing that's true. Any student who dares to train in the 3 realms and 6 daos will emerge stronger than before. The Astral Combat Academy is like a gate that protects the 3 realms and 6 daos, which is why so many people want to join. Lu Yin looked at Lulu. Do you know who the 10 arbiters are? Lulu and Xiao Luo glanced at Lu Yin, but neither spoke. You don't know? Lulu shrugged. I don't know. Lu Yin looked at Xiao Luo. Xiao Luo shook his head. Don't ask me, I don't know either. We don't even have the qualifications to know. Even the Emperor of the Great Yu Empire, Undying Yushan, might not know. Those 10 are high and mighty and no news outlet dares to touch them. Lu Yin was disappointed. He thought back to the news that he had seen before. The 10 Arbiters Council only had 10 shadows, and he really did not have the qualifications to know. Only one person on the Perseverance knew: Mira, the woman from the 10 Arbiters Council. However, Lu Yin was sure that she would not tell him and might even develop a bad impression of him. The toad that swallowed the sky had great ambitions, but was narrow-minded. It would not be worth it to ask her. When the Perseverance vibrated again, a notification came that they were about to arrive at the capital star. Lu Yin looked out the window and saw spacecraft after spacecraft fly past. He could clearly feel the prosperity of this place. This was the capital star of the Great Yu Empire's first filament. Not long after, Lu Yin saw a huge planet in the distance with 3 continents surrounding it. It was a magnificent sight, and there were terrifying star energy fluctuations from time to time. A fleet of spaceships stretched far into the distance. This was the capital star. There weren't many students left on the Perseverance at this point, and they were all descendants of nobles like Roz and Hu Shaoling. Roz excitedly activated his gadget when he saw the capital star approaching. "Senior, please, I'll definitely take revenge. He's the Zishan king. If you embarrass him, you'll be offending his entire bloodline." Roz was disdainful. "Senior, let's not beat around the bush. The Zishan king's bloodline has long since withered, and many of them have joined my father. There aren't many who can truly support him. His Majesty only gave him the Zishan throne because of the promise he made back then. Does he really think that the throne can last forever? If he doesn't die, the crown prince and second prince won't have peace. Have you forgotten about the captain of the 13th Squadron?" Roz froze for a moment before smiling. "That woman only wants the Zishan family's reputation and treasures. If he dies, she might even thank us." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the gadget. "All right, I can help you teach him a lesson, but at most I'll just embarrass him. I can't help you kill him, that'd be suicide." Roz sighed and smiled cruelly. "Of course, thank you." He then hung up and looked up at the capital star. "Lu Yin, do you really think that the Zishan king's position is that easy to sit on? The higher you climb, the harder you fall. Seems like you don't understand." Just as the Perseverance was about to reach the capital star, dozens of courtiers stood respectfully within the palace, looking up at the dignified figure in front of them. This was the undying Yushan, the emperor of the Great Yu Empire. In his 800 years on the throne, he had developed the Great Yu Empire from a small and weak country to its current state that spanned 13 filaments. Even the Immerse had heard of him. The undying Yushan was a legend. When he was young, he had reached the top 10 of the astral combat rankings and shaken the entire universe. He had been ambitious enough to roam the Immerse, but he had been ambushed and forced to retreat to the Frostwave Weave. Even so, he had still brought the Great Yu Empire to its current state. The undying Yushan's strength as a hunter was enough to survive for 1,000 years, but at this moment his imposing figure seemed to be in his twilight years. He was rapidly aging. The Great Yu Empire's technology was advanced, but it still followed the ancient courtier system. The courtiers that represented the various filaments stood solemnly, and in front of them were the captains of the 13 imperial squadrons. Compared to the solemn courtiers, the 13 imperial squadrons' captains were much weirder. Some were 2 meters tall, some had white eyes, some had fiery red hair, and some were bald and blind. There were all sorts of people, and they gave off the feeling of a mob. They looked casual, but they were all terrifyingly powerful, and they represented the Great Yu Empire's greatest fighting power. At the very front were 2 figures. One was the Empire's second prince, Duke Yushan, who had his hands in his pockets and was chewing on something absent-mindedly. The other was much more normal, with a smile on his face and a dignified look in his eyes. He looked very similar to the undying Yushan. He was Doran Yushan, the crown prince of the Great Yu Empire. The matter of establishing diplomatic relations with Grand Top Weave ends here. Next, I would like to mention someone, Lu Yin, the undying Yushan said, his dignified eyes sweeping across everyone with a trace of exhaustion. Everyone was shocked when they heard this name. The first time this name had appeared, it had shocked the entire court. It represented a family that had long since declined, but was still shocking: the Zishan family. Crown Prince Doran immediately stepped forward and respectfully said, "Father, royal brother Lu Yin is about to arrive. Do you need me to welcome him?" The undying Yushan waved his hand. "I've already sent Bronson to welcome him. His status is enough to represent the imperial family. Bronson is the first squadron's 3rd seat. and he is indeed qualified to act as a vice-captain, Doran respectfully replied before returning to his seat. The second prince, Duke Yushan, glanced at him, still chewing on something as if he didn't care at all. The undying Yushan coughed a few times. I used to be brothers with Zishan, and the empire wasn't conquered by me alone. Zishan also contributed to it. Now that the Zishan family has been annihilated and Lu Yin is the only survivor, it's truly pitiful. I've already decreed that Lu Yin can inherit the Zishan throne and enjoy the honors of an outsider. As you command, Your Majesty, everyone replied in unison. The undying Yushan nodded and coughed again. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 74. At this point, an old man walked out. Your Majesty, I have a question, but I'm not sure if it's appropriate. Undying Yushan smiled. Feel free to speak in court. The Zishan family once had a marriage agreement with the royal family. Is that agreement still in effect? The man asked loudly. Everyone looked up at Undying Yushan. Even the captains of the 13 imperial squadrons and the absent-minded duke turned to look at him. Undying Yushan's eyes narrowed. This was a difficult question to answer. If he denied it, the royal family would lose face, but if he admitted it, he couldn't do it. There was only one princess waiting to be married. The fifth princess, Wendy Yushan. No one could decide Wendy Yushan's marriage because she wasn't an ordinary princess. She was a disciple of the Immerse Myriad Swords Peak. And even more terrifying was that she was ranked in the top 20 of the astral combat rankings. She was one of the few powerhouses in the Outerverse who could reach the top of the rankings. She was the pride of the Frostwave Weave in the Outerverse, and she was known as the second Undying Yushan. In terms of status, even Undying Yushan couldn't compare to Wendy Yushan, let alone decide her marriage. It wasn't that he didn't want to, but that he didn't have the ability. Undying Yushan suddenly coughed violently, and a few healers immediately rushed over to inject him with medicine. His coughing soon subsided. Pass down my orders, the court will be suspended until Lu Yin arrives. The Perseverance slowly landed on Xenu Star's space station. Beams of light descended as Lu Yin and the rest finally stepped onto Xenu Star's surface. It was a bustling scene as far as the eye could see. Countless advanced technologies were being used in daily life, and bridges made of unknown metals connected the entire city. A spacecraft streaked across the sky and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Lu Yin stretched and felt the gravity of Xenu Star, which was similar to Earth's. The air was very fresh and the star energy here far surpassed Earth's. Xenu Star was tens of thousands of times larger than Earth, and it was unknown how many people lived on this vast continent, as well as how many strange races there were. Zhou Xian looked around in a daze. This was the alien civilization that was monitoring Earth. Whether it was in terms of technology or cultivation, Earth couldn't compare to them at all. Zhang Dingtian, Bai Shui and Saruzin were all very calm. They had already read about the various technological civilizations in the library, so they weren't too surprised. On the other hand, Xenu Star's technology seemed to be rather backward. Tranquility returned to the Perseverance as teams of soldiers landed. Soon Sigmund, Shalosh and Tori Anna appeared. Mira had left the ship at some point. At this moment the army suddenly surrounded them from afar. Zhang Dingtian furrowed his brows. Something was wrong. The atmosphere of these soldiers was solemn, and there was even a trace of killing intent. He was from the military, so he was very sensitive to such auras. This was the prelude to an attack. Be careful, Zhang Dingtian warned. Lu Yin also felt that something was amiss, and the surrounding soldiers were looking at them warily. The Perseverance's surroundings were sealed off as invisible weapons locked onto the crew, especially Sigmund. Sigmund's face was solemn as he looked at the descending man. Bronson? What do you mean? Everyone looked at this scene. The man named Bronson was obviously a space-exploring powerhouse. Powerhouses above the Limiter realm were known as explorers. As long as one's power level exceeded 10,000, they were considered explorers. Those with a power level of 50,000 were known as cruisers, and those with a power level of over 100,000 were known as hunters. The emperor of the Great Yu Empire, Undying Yushan, was a hunter, but there were very few of them in the entire empire. Sigmund, Shalosh and Tori Anna were all explorers and Bronson was one as well. Bronson took out an arrest warrant. By order of His Imperial Majesty, I am here to arrest Sigmund Mathers. Charge: colluding with foreign races and treason. Everyone was in an uproar and the soldiers following Sigmund were shocked. Treason? That was a capital offense. Lu Yin was shocked as well. Treason? Shalosh and Tori Anna looked at each other, also at a loss. As vice-captains of the 13 Imperial squadrons, they hadn't been informed of this beforehand. It was obvious that the news had been sealed off, and this was specifically targeted at Sigmund. Only Undying Yushan could have done something like this. Sigmund frowned as he stared at the arrest warrant, his face pale. Why? I didn't betray the Empire. Why is His Imperial Majesty arresting me? Bronson's gaze was cold as he waved a hand, and a group of soldiers arrested Sigmund. Sigmund didn't resist and just stared at Bronson. Bronson walked up to Sigmund and said coldly, 27 Corpse Kings escaped during Earth's evolutionary trial. Baruta betrayed the Empire and blew up Gunma's space station. Sigmund's eyes narrowed. What did you say? Bronson tapped on his gadget and a screen appeared, showing the conversation between Sigmund and Baruta. You are the last person to see Baruta, and you are also the person in charge of Earth's evolutionary trial. The Empire has reason to believe that you colluded with foreign races and took away the Corpse Kings. He then shouted, take him away. Sigmund's face turned ashen. As an explorer, he didn't resist and allowed the soldiers to take him away. Everyone watched Sigmund's back as he was escorted away in silence. A space-exploring powerhouse, a general of the Empire, was finished just like that. Lu Yin stared at Sigmund's back, remembering the moment he had announced himself as King Zishan. This person had told him to look for him if he ran into any trouble, but who would have thought that he would end up like this? Bronson nodded to Shalosh and Tori before walking up to Lu Yin and bowing. Third captain of the 1st Imperial Squadron, Bronson greets King Zishan. Lu Yin retracted his gaze and looked at Bronson. You may rise. Thank you, King Zishan, Bronson replied. His Imperial Majesty has ordered me to escort you to the palace. This way, Your Highness. Where are my friends? Lu Yin asked. Rest assured, Your Highness, the Empire will make the necessary arrangements. Lu Yin nodded and had Zhou Xian follow him. He glanced at Zhang Dingtian and the others before walking out of the space station. Zhou Xian followed along in fear, not daring to leave Lu Yin's side. Lulu, on the other hand, was bored and ran off on her own. Xia Luo strolled leisurely through the space station, completely ignoring them. Roz looked at Lu Yin's back with jealousy, followed by Munoer, Eddie and a few others. They were all experts from Yu Academy, which was located in the first ring. Hua Shaoling, Jenny Anna, and the other nobles were taken away one after another. Zhang Dingtian and the other two were taken away along with Roz and the others. They were going to Yu Academy to undergo body remodeling, a reward given to them by the Great Yu Empire. Ordinary people wouldn't receive such a reward even if they passed the trial, mainly because of their talents. The Great Yu Empire was strong because it constantly absorbed new blood. Zenithstar's space station was huge and it didn't take long for a spacecraft to stop in front of them. This way, Your Highness. Lu Yin and Zhou Xian boarded the spacecraft while Bronson floated beside them. With a roar, the spacecraft sped off into the distance. Zhou Xian looked at the spacecraft curiously, focusing on the position of the screen. The route had been set long ago. This was a smart pilot. General Bronson, may I ask you a question? Lu Yin asked politely. Bronson's star energy cleared the air around him and he replied respectfully, Please ask, Your Highness. I heard you say that there were 27 zombie kings. What do you mean? Bronson's gaze turned cold. Your Highness's planet has evolved, giving birth to strong cultivators and failed zombies. There's a type of zombie king that can consume natural energy crystals to gain great strength. There's an alliance of these zombie kings in the universe called the Neo-Human Alliance. They claim to be the new humans, representing the true direction of human evolution. They're all made up of zombie kings and are extremely dangerous. Lu Yin's eyes flashed as he thought of the long-haired zombie king and the one that Zhang Dingtian had killed. Innate gifts were rare among humans, but zombie kings could obtain them by consuming natural energy crystals. This meant that every member of the Neo-Human Alliance had an innate gift. No wonder the Great Yu Empire was so concerned. This was an alliance made up of zombie kings with innate gifts, and they were naturally dangerous. 27 zombie kings escaped from Earth's trial. Is it serious? Lu Yin asked. Bronson pondered for a while and said, death penalty. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 75. Normally, the corpses must be cleaned up immediately after a trial to prevent a new corpse king from being taken away by the Neo-Human Alliance. But Sigmund didn't do so this time. Baruda even defected, so the Empire decided that he colluded with another race, Bronson explained. Lu Yin nodded and didn't ask any more questions. The Mathers family was a former subordinate of the Zhou Xian family, but Lu Yin had just entered the capital and had yet to gain a firm foothold. There was no way he could help Sigmund, so he could only pray for himself. Lu Yin thought of Silver and was certain that he was a member of the Neo-Human Alliance. Could he be a corpse king? That didn't seem likely. Silver had left at Gunma space station, so Lu Yin guessed that Baruda's defection had something to do with him. Lu Yin didn't think too much about it. So what if he knew the truth? He couldn't say anything about it. Sigmund had been convicted of treason without a single explanation, so he couldn't be sure if the Zhou Xian family was involved. This was different from Ra's probing on the spacecraft. This was a killing intent that even an explorer couldn't avoid. After observing Xenu Star's environment for 2 hours, the spacecraft finally saw the majestic Great Yu Palace. Towering buildings pierced the sky. This was the Grand Yu Palace, the center of power in the Great Yu Empire. Even from so far away, the majesty it exuded was shocking. Su San's lips trembled as he looked into the distance in fear. The Grand Yu Palace was like a monster that could swallow the heavens. The Grand Yu Palace is entered through 13 gates guarded by the 13 Imperial squadrons. The main gate is called the Grand Astral Gate and corresponds to the first squadron. Your Majesty, His Majesty has ordered me to bring you in through the Grand Astral Gate, Bronson said respectfully. Lu Yin nodded silently and disembarked. He looked up and saw the palace towering into the clouds, the star energy visible to the naked eye rippling outwards. Su San was left behind. He didn't have the right to enter with his status, and he was only allowed to approach the palace out of respect for Lu Yin. The Grand Yu Palace was huge, and it took 20 minutes to reach the Grand Imperial Court through the Grand Astral Gate. Along the way, Lu Yin saw the unique cultural heritage of the Great Yu Empire. Carved railings and jade buildings were carved with countless stories. There was little technology in the palace, and the further in he went, the more ancient it seemed. When he saw the Imperial Court, Lu Yin even suspected that he had traveled through the River of Time and arrived in ancient times. Bronson bowed towards the hall and gestured for Lu Yin to enter while he waited outside. He took a deep breath as he sensed the countless star energy undulations all around him. Step by step he approached the palace and finally stopped outside. Cough cough, Undying Yushan coughed twice and looked out of the hall with a smile. Come in. All the courtiers stood solemnly. Only the captains of the 13 Imperial squadrons turned their heads to look outside the hall curiously. Lu Yin stepped into the palace and with a single step, the world around him changed drastically. An indescribable pressure descended from the heavens, causing everything in front of him to turn gray. The ground trembled faintly and he immediately lost his hearing. Lu Yin's pupils shrank. This was the pressure of an absolute powerhouse. The air was distorted as if threads were connecting the heavens and the earth. Lu Yin's organs began to hurt and his vision blurred. The star energy in his body was suppressed to the point where he couldn't move. The courtiers slowly turned to look at the door, all sorts of expressions on their faces. Seriousness, ridicule, arrogance, and so on. A native had suddenly transformed into King Zishan, who stood above countless others. This pressure didn't come from a single person but from everyone. It wasn't released on purpose, but rather a rejection caused by dissatisfaction. The entire court wanted to expel Lu Yin. Lu Yin felt dizzy, his fingers trembling as Undying Yushan's figure gradually disappeared. He couldn't take it anymore. Huff! With a low shout, Lu Yin bit the tip of his tongue and tore open the flesh of his palm. Fresh blood dripped down his palm, but the pain woke him up. He lifted his foot and took another step, completely entering the palace. Suddenly the pressure receded like a tide. Everyone looked at him in shock. It wasn't easy for a sentinel to withstand such pressure. At the front, Crown Prince Doran Yushan smiled, while the second prince curled his lips. Amongst the captains of the 13 imperial squadrons, a bald, blind man nodded imperceptibly. At the top, Undying Yushan laughed. "Come closer." Lu Yin exhaled and raised his head to meet Undying Yushan's gaze. His gaze was solemn as he walked forward, passing by the courtiers and even the captains of the 13 imperial squadrons. Finally, he stopped in front of the crown prince and second prince. "Lu Yin greets his majesty." Undying Yushan smiled and was about to speak when he coughed again and drank some water. "Call me royal uncle." Lu Yin bowed. "Royal uncle." Undying Yushan nodded. "You've suffered outside for so many years." "Thank you for your concern, royal uncle," Lu Yin replied respectfully. "Royal brother, royal father has always been concerned about the Zishan family. Where have you been all these years? Why is there no news at all? And who gave you the name Lu Yin?" Crown Prince Doran asked. Everyone looked at Lu Yin. Ever since Lu Yin's Zishan bloodline had been confirmed, the Great Yu Empire had been investigating him, but they hadn't been able to find anything. This was inconceivable. The Great Yu Empire was one of the top powers in the Frostwave Weave, but they couldn't even investigate a single person's background. This made everyone curious about Lu Yin. Lu Yin had already prepared an answer. "To tell the truth, I've lost my memories and only remember this name. If you don't believe me, you can check my brain. I'm telling the truth." Doran quickly waved his hand and smiled. "Royal brother, you're exaggerating. There's no need for that. Your identity as a descendant of the Zishan family has already been confirmed. No matter what happened in the past, the Great Yu Empire will always be your strongest backer." The Crown Prince is right. "Little Yin, you can stay in the Empire with peace of mind. Take over the Zishan throne and bring the Zishan bloodline to greater heights," Undying Yushan said clearly. Lu Yin quickly agreed. "Royal father, has royal brother Lu Yin's residence been arranged? If not, I'm willing to arrange it for him." Second Prince Duque spoke for the first time. Undying Yushan smiled. "No need, little Yin doesn't need anyone to arrange his residence. The Zishan Palace is his home." Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 76. By the time Undying Yushan was done, Lu Yin's legs felt weak. "You must be tired." "Sorry, old people like to reminisce about the past." Undying Yushan shook his head and smiled, pushing the dessert in front of Lu Yin. "Try this, it's Zishan's favorite dessert." Lu Yin nodded and took a bite. It tasted pretty good. Just as Undying Yushan was about to speak, he glanced at Doran and Duque. "You're still here? Go back, I want to talk to little Yin alone." Lu Yin almost spat out his food. Was this a prank? He had listened to Undying Yushan for 3 hours, but he didn't even care. Doran and Duque seemed to be used to it and bowed respectfully before leaving. "There are too many things bothering me in the Great Yu Empire, and this is the only place where I can have some peace and quiet. Back then when I roamed the universe with the Undying Zishan, who didn't know of the Undying duo? It's a pity that he left before me and I've been struggling at death's door for a few hundred years. I thought that I would never see a descendant of the Zishan family again, but fortunately, the heavens have eyes and have brought you here. Little Yin, I'm very gratified to be able to see you before I die," the Undying Yushan sighed. Lu Yin could only accompany him. "Your Majesty is the strongest in the universe, and living for another 10,000 years won't be a problem. You won't die so easily." "I know my own body, you don't need to comfort me." Undying Yushan shook his head helplessly and smiled. "I've seen what happened on Earth and you're not bad. You were able to defeat a Night King, even a newly awakened one. Few people in the same realm are your match, and you let me see the shadow of Zishan in his youth." Lu Yin was ashamed. "Qingyu is too strong. If not for my classmates working together, I wouldn't have been able to defeat him alone." Undying Yushan smiled. "That's also because of your intelligence. That trial was completely under your control and in the end, you even forced a melder to attack on your behalf. Very smart. Only smart people can survive well." Lu Yin didn't reply. "I understand what happened on the spacecraft. Go ahead and do what you need to do. As long as I'm on the throne, you'll be fine." Undying Yushan suddenly changed the topic. Lu Yin hurriedly took 2 steps back. Thank you, Your Majesty. Undying Xian nodded and took out a cosmic ring. It's your first time on the capital star, so you'll need money everywhere. Here's a Mavis Bank crystal card and some star crystals. Take them. Lu Yin did not refuse and said, Thank you, Your Majesty. Undying Xian grunted, You're too weak. I've already ordered Bronson to protect you. But I'm tired. You may leave. Lu Yin had wanted to refuse, but when he saw Undying Xian close his eyes, he swallowed his words and bowed once more before turning to leave. The dignified Iron Emperor of the Great Yu Empire was now in his twilight years. In his 800 years on the throne, he had expanded nearly half of the empire's territory. In truth, Lu Yin admired the man from the bottom of his heart, but any expansion was accompanied by death. Lu Yin didn't know how history would judge him after Undying Xian's death, but he was still grateful to the man for taking care of him. He looked at his cosmic ring and saw that Undying Xian had given him 20 cubes of star crystals. It wasn't much, but it was a lot for a cultivator of his level. He wondered how much money was in the card. Lu Yin left the garden under the guidance of a palace maid. Bronson was already waiting outside and stepped forward the moment he saw Lu Yin. Greetings, Your Majesty. Lu Yin smiled. Thank you, General Bronson. Bronson replied solemnly, It's my duty to protect you, Your Majesty. Please don't be so polite. Lu Yin nodded and walked out of the palace. Bronson followed behind Lu Yin, maintaining a distance of 1 meter, neither too far nor too close. By the way, General Bronson, I heard that you're one of the 3 captains of the first squadron. Can you tell me more about the 13 squadrons? I'm willing to answer your questions, Your Majesty. Bronson paused for a moment before continuing. The 13 squadrons correspond to the 13 gates of the Imperial Palace. Entering the palace requires passing through the 13 squadrons, and they are His Majesty's shield. Every captain has the power of a cruiser and is the best in the Frostwave Weave. More importantly, the 13 squadrons correspond to the 13 filaments of the Great Yu Empire. Nearly half of the administration comes from the 13 squadrons, and the leader of a filament is always a captain. Lu Yin was shocked. The 13 squadrons are related to the Empire's filaments? Bronson replied. His Majesty appoints the filaments' leaders to be the captains of the 13 squadrons. Ordinary administrators of the filaments are the vice-captains of the 13 squadrons, and the 13 squadrons have the authority to supervise the respective filaments. It was no wonder that the 13 Imperial squadrons were said to be the most powerful department in the Empire. The captains were all high-ranking officials who even had the authority to appoint and dismiss administrative officials. Undying Xian had distributed the authority and taken control of the source himself. This would save him a lot of trouble and prevent him from having to worry about rebellion. Usually only those who had great confidence in the central government would do something like this, which showed just how confident Undying Xian was. Bronson introduced Lu Yin to the captains of the 13 squadrons. Lu Yin didn't react at first since he didn't know any of them, but when Bronson mentioned the captain he was shocked. What? Luing Zishan? Her name is Luing Zishan? Bronson nodded. Yes, she's the captain of the 13 squadrons. She's currently handling some matters in the 13th filament, but she'll be back soon. Lu Yin frowned. She's also from the Zishan family? Bronson shook his head. Captain Luing is not from the Zishan family. As for why her surname is Zishan, please ask her yourself, Your Majesty. Lu Yin's eyes twinkled. If she wasn't from the Zishan family but had the surname Zishan, where did she come from? Undying Xian hadn't mentioned it when they met. Had he forgotten? Unknowingly, Lu Yin brought Bronson to the Grand Astral Gate where Crown Prince Doran was smiling at him. Lu Yin hurried forward. Why are you here, Your Highness? You weren't waiting for me, were you? Doran smiled. Of course I was waiting for you, Your Majesty. This is your first time on the capital star and I don't have much to give you. I hope you don't mind. He passed a cosmic ring to Lu Yin. Lu Yin's eyes lit up but he was too embarrassed to look at it. You're too kind, Your Majesty. I'll accept it, thank you. Doran smiled. Your Majesty is forthright. By the way, the capital star is huge and it's inconvenient for you to move around. I've already sent someone to deliver the latest model of aircraft. It's right outside the Grand Astral Gate for your use. Lu Yin thanked him again. Doran didn't say much. only instructing Bronson to take good care of Lu Yin before he left. The captain of the first squadron was Undying Yushan himself. The left vice-captain was Crown Prince Doran Yushan, and the right vice-captain was the second prince, Duke Yushan. As one of the three captains of the first squadron, Bronson had to listen to Doran. Watching Doran leave, Lu Yin looked at his cosmic ring and was surprised that the Crown Prince had given him 50 star crystals, more than what Undying Yushan had given him. Who knew how much he had embezzled? He couldn't help but sigh. The Crown Prince is such a nice person as expected of the next emperor, so humble and gentle. Bronson lowered his head and didn't say anything. Lu Yin had only taken 2 steps when he suddenly thought of something. Clenching his fists, he walked out of the Grand Astral Gate with an inexplicable smile. Outside the Grand Astral Gate, Zhou Xian was hiding in a corner, his eyes shining as he looked at the dazzling aircraft in the distance. Whether it was size or shape, it was far superior to the one that had brought them here. There was no comparison at all. That moving, streamline and domineering design was a man's romance. Zhou Xian was almost drooling as he looked at the aircraft, wondering whose it was. Such a cool thing had to be expensive. Lu Yin quickly walked out and called out to Zhou Xian before heading straight for the very cool aircraft. Zhou Xian quickly ran over. "Boss, don't touch it, it's obviously expensive. Don't let people think we're scammers." Lu Yin was speechless. "Don't embarrass yourself. Get on." He opened the door and sat inside. Zhou Xian was stunned for a moment before he excitedly asked, "Boss, is this ours?" Of course. Lu Yin felt that this fellow was a bit embarrassing and needed to be brought along to broaden his horizons. Otherwise he wouldn't be able to sell it for a good price. "Let's go, we'll find Zhang Dingtian and the rest at Yu Academy." "Boss, how do you know they're at the first ring?" Zhou Xian asked. "The remodeling is at Yu Academy, let's go." Lu Yin activated the aircraft and it shot out with a blast of air, automatically planning its route and heading towards the first ring. Bronson immediately followed through the void. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 77. Xenu Star was surrounded by 3 rings of land, with the first ring being the closest to it. Even so, there was still a considerable distance between them and it took a full 2 hours for them to arrive. This was the Great Yu Empire's newest aircraft, and its speed surpassed even that of a Lemeter. Even so, it still took 2 hours. From Lu Yin's perspective, the distance between Xenu Star and the first ring was like an ocean that needed to be crossed. Lu Yin's group wasn't the only one heading to the first ring. He saw dozens of others along the way, but none were as fast as him. Not everyone could enter the 3 rings and only those with special permission could enter. All 3 rings were important military areas, and the first ring was especially restricted to Yu Academy. The aircraft that Crown Prince Doran Yushan had given to Lu Yin had obviously been specially approved, and it was unimpeded. It didn't even need to land at the first ring's platform, and it could head straight to the formcast pool. "Boss, that's awesome. Look, there are so many people being checked and they're obviously the nobles of the empire. Even they have to stop for inspection, but we can pass through directly. This is what it means to be a noble." Zhou Xian shouted excitedly. Lu Yin told him to shut up and glanced at Bronson, who occasionally appeared in the distance. The moment they passed the platform, Bronson appeared and all the soldiers and officers on the platform bowed to him. Even though he was only the 3rd seat, his position was comparable to that of the vice-captains of other squadrons. His status in the Great Yu Empire was extremely high, not because he was an explorer but because of his status. Did his family want him to inherit the Zishan name and enter the Great Yu Empire because they wanted him to enter the 13 Imperial Squadrons? Then what about the Great Yu Empire Youth Council? What did his family want? No one had contacted him yet. Lu Yin grew irritated at the thought of this. The first ring surrounded Xenu Star and its diameter was similar to that of Xenu Star. Its surface area far exceeded that of Xenu Star's, and the scenery was rough with sand and dust everywhere. Occasionally there would be a tornado that connected the heavens and the earth, causing Zhou Xian's face to turn pale. This was where Yu Academy was located, and it was also where the elites trained. It was also where the Yu Academy's military was stationed. The aircraft flew along the planned safe route without encountering any danger, but 10 minutes later, a roar shook the sky, tearing the air apart and cracking the ground. The terrifying shockwave almost flipped the aircraft over. Fortunately, Bronson intervened and blocked it. This was the roar of a Lemeter. It was not as invincible as an explorer's, but it still made Lu Yin's heart tremble. This was definitely a Lemeter. Did Yu Academy's elites often come into contact with Lemeters? After thinking about Roz and Eddie, Lu Yin shook his head. Probably not. Boss, I feel like Xianxia is still safer. Why don't we head back? Zhou Xian asked in a trembling voice. Lu Yin ignored him. An hour later, the sky gradually darkened. In the distance, a huge mountain range came into view. The most eye-catching thing was that the middle of the mountain range was hollowed out and surrounded by an unknown transparent metal. Countless soldiers stood above the mountain range, densely packed and imposing. This was Yu Academy's formcast pool. Lu Yin brought Zhou Xian in after the aircraft landed, but they were stopped. Even someone of Bronson's status couldn't enter, so they had to show their communication pass. Even you can't enter Yu Academy as you please? Bronson replied, Yu Academy is the best academy in the Empire, and even His Majesty cannot interfere. This was an order from His Majesty when he first ascended the throne. I cannot interfere with anything that happens in Yu Academy unless it endangers Your Majesty's life. Please take care of yourself, Your Majesty. Lu Yin nodded. He couldn't help but admire undying Yu Xian. He had given the younger generation as much freedom as he could and had won over their hearts. As they approached the formcast pool, Lu Yin heard a low growl that contained extreme pain. His expression changed. It was Zhang Dingtian's voice. He was about to rush in when Bronson spoke up. Formcasting is extremely painful. It's like having your body broken down and reformed. Not only does it disperse the energy in your cells, but it also regenerates blood. If you can't endure it, you'll fail, and failure means death. Lu Yin paused, regained his composure and walked in. The formcast pool was surrounded by countless soldiers and guarded by many of Yu Academy's experts. There were even space-exploring powerhouses among them, but the pool consumed too many resources. If not for Zhang Dingtian being a realm breaker, he wouldn't have been qualified to remodel even if he had defeated the strongest person in the academy. Lu Yin saw Bai Shui and Saruzin outside of the formcast pool, which was strictly prohibited from entering while it was in use. Bai Shui's eyes lit up when she saw him. How long has Zhang Dingtian been in there? He asked. A few hours, Bai Shui whispered. He's been in pain for a few hours? Lu Yin was astonished. Bai Shui nodded, her face pale. Lu Yin was full of admiration. Reconstructing a physical body was an excruciating pain that even a soldier like Zhang Dingtian would find difficult to bear. He glanced at Saruzin, suddenly curious to see what the man looked like. He wondered if this monk knew how to scream. Damn it, where did that dog bark come from? It's so noisy, a discordant voice sounded from nearby. Lu Yin and the others looked over and saw a few youths dressed in dirty clothes. It was obvious that they had just returned from training outside. They were all elites of Yu Academy, at least at Eddie's level. What are you looking at? Trash, wasting the Empire's resources. If the pool's resources were given to us, we'd have become melders long ago. A bunch of trash, one of the youths taunted Lu Yin. A few others stared at Bai Shui, their eyes almost popping out of their sockets. The one who had just shouted also saw her, his mouth agape. She was too beautiful. Bai Shui was disgusted. If you want resources, fight for it yourself. We fought for the chance to remodel. Oh, you're pretty hot. Fight for it, huh? Fine, let's see what you're capable of. One of the youths was clearly interested in Bai Shui, taking the initiative to touch her face instead of hurting her. Lu Yin frowned but didn't attack. Bai Shui snorted and struck out with a palm. The youth's expressions were frivolous, but their eyes were serious. Anyone who could join Yu Academy was no ordinary person, and they naturally knew what it meant to be qualified to remodel. They didn't underestimate her, immediately turning their palms into claws and roaring, "Sky Beast Claw." Bai Shui's expression changed, but she wasn't afraid. She was much stronger than she had been on Earth, and her training on the Perseverance was beginning to bear fruit. She dodged the Sky Beast Claw with the roving step, something Lu Yin had taught her. She could adapt to 40 times the gravity better than Saruzin, and her speed had already surpassed the average sentinels. The Sky Beast Claw slammed into the ground, but it didn't cause much damage. Bai Shui pressed her palm against the youth's abdomen, freezing him in the next moment. An innate gift of ice, the youth gasped and retreated without a second thought. However, the ice shattered with a bang, and a figure suddenly flashed past the youth and struck at Bai Shui. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. Despicable. He raised his palm and punched out, revealing 5 stars. At the same time, Bronson almost made a move because the attacker was a melder, but he stopped when he saw Lu Yin's palm strike. In that instant he felt that Lu Yin wasn't any weaker than the melder attacking him. In fact, he might even be stronger. The 2 palms brushed past Bai Shui's side and collided fiercely, causing the air to tremble as a shockwave swept out in all directions. Bai Shui, who was the closest, was immediately pushed away, followed by the Yu Academy students and Saruzin. The huge shockwave was pushed away in an instant, leaving a vacuum in the ground. Lu Yin could clearly see the attacker. It was an unfamiliar man, but he also saw the ferocious gaze fixed on him. This person's target wasn't Bai Shui but him. A terrifying pressure pressed down on Lu Yin. The attacker was a melder, and the power of his star energy was enough to crush Lu Yin. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold as he detonated the stars in his palm. The first 3 stars had been used to resist the attacker's attack, but the moment the 4th star was detonated, the attacker's expression changed. He bent his fingers and formed a sky beast claw that pressed down on Lu Yin. Lu Yin growled as the 5th star exploded, and the 2 of them were sent flying backwards. Arcs of energy shot out in all directions, causing the guards to raise their eyebrows. Lu Yin took 5 steps back while the melder youth across him took 7 steps back, his face filled with shock. It wasn't just the melder youth, Bronson, and even the powerhouses guarding the formcast pool stared at Lu Yin in shock. A sentinel defeating a melder wasn't a simple realm breaker, not to mention an elite from Yu Academy. Bai Shui also stared at Lu Yin in shock. He had grown even stronger. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 78. The other Yu Academy students were stunned. Senior Tyson actually lost? How is that possible? He's one of the few melders in our branch, but he was defeated by a sentinel. When he heard this, the melder youth named Tyson's eyes turned fierce. Again, he shouted as he charged towards Lu Yin, raising his hand to attack with a sky beast claw. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. This person's sky beast claw was even stronger than Immerse when he was a melder. Yu Academy was indeed full of powerhouses, as expected of the Great Yu Empire's elite camp. However, with his 5-star serious palm, he wasn't afraid of such a powerhouse. Just as he was about to attack, a huge force swept across the crowd. It was a melder like Tyson, but Lu Yin's hair stood on end as his expression changed. He wasn't a match for this power. Who was it? Tyson's body suddenly froze, his face pale as he slowly turned around to see a figure walking over from the distance. Lu Yin followed Tyson's gaze and saw a young man about the same age as Tyson, perhaps even younger. However, the moment he saw him, Lu Yin was certain that he was the owner of that power. He was a young melder whose strength far surpassed Tyson's. Lu Yin's 5-star cosmic palm might have been able to deal with Tyson, but it was definitely not a match for this person. Lu Yin's expression turned solemn. This person was the most terrifying melder he had ever met. Hallmaster Tianming, Tyson stammered in fear. Hallmaster? Lu Yin was puzzled. He didn't know much about Yu Academy as the Great Yu Empire had sealed off all information about it. He had asked Zhou and the others before, but even they didn't know much about it. They only knew that Yu Academy gathered the strongest youths of the empire, but they didn't know how it was divided or ranked. Tyson, you're getting smarter and smarter, even learning how to sneak up on me. Why don't you find a chance to sneak up on me? If you defeat me, the position of Hallmaster will be yours, Tianming said coldly as he walked to the front of the group. Tyson's expression changed and he hurriedly spoke up. Hallmaster, I didn't do it on purpose, I just saw. Tianming cut him off before he could finish. I saw everything clearly. Your target wasn't the girl but King Zishan. Who gave you the guts to sneak up on him? Tyson didn't reply, beads of sweat dripping from his forehead. Tianming waved his hand, a gust of wind that transformed into an invisible beast claw that slammed into Tyson's chest and sent him flying. Get out. The other Yu Academy students quickly left as well, not even daring to look back. Lu Yin's heart skipped a beat when he saw Tianming attack. It was the Sky Beast Claw, but it was different from Tissen and the others. Tianming had cultivated the Sky Beast Claw to an extremely high level, and his every move could be transformed into a claw without the need for a palm strike. He was definitely an expert. Tianming's eyes flashed Lu's eyes. And Tianming. Lu, 1. Bronson whispered, Schutz Gerbach Lo Huizhong and this Tianming. They're the 5 hall masters of Yu Academy, the best of the younger generation. Lu Yin nodded. Tianming had just finished dealing with Tyson and turned to Lu Yin apologetically. It's my fault for not being strict enough. Are you hurt, King Zishan? You're too polite, Hall Master Tianming. We were just sparring, Lu Yin replied. Although Tianming was only a student of Yu Academy, he had absolute authority as a Hall Master. Tianming sighed. I can tell the difference between a sneak attack and a sparring match. Yu Academy has lost a lot of talent over the past few years, and they've only produced such embarrassing things. I heard that Yu Academy lost a lot of face during Earth's trial, King Zishan. Lu Yin smiled. We barely won the last battle with the help of Yu Academy's experts. Hall Master Tianming is too humble. Tianming smiled and exchanged a few polite words with Bronson before turning to Bai Shui. Miss, I apologize on behalf of the students of Yu Academy. I saw what happened on the surveillance camera, I'm sorry. Bai Shui had an indifferent personality and nodded without saying anything. Lu Yin was curious. Hall Master Tianming, can I learn the 108 forms of the Sky Beast Claw from Yu Academy? Tianming nodded. Of course, King Zishan is a member of Yu Academy from the moment you arrived on the capital star. I can agree to let you learn the first 5 forms. Lu Yin frowned. Only the first 5 forms? Tianming smiled. King Zishan might not know this, but the Sky Beast Claw is Yu Academy's top battle technique, and it's also the Great Yu Empire's top battle technique. Ordinary people are unable to learn it, and joining Yu Academy is only for the right to learn it. If you want to learn it, you need the agreement of the Hall Masters. If 1 Hall Master agrees, you can learn the first 5 forms. If 3 Hall Masters agree, you can learn the first 10 forms. So there's such a rule, Lu Yin said helplessly. Generally speaking, Sentinels of Yu Academy can only learn the first 5 forms. The Sky Beast Claw isn't easy to learn, but for Sentinels the first 5 forms are enough. Only Melders can learn the first 10 forms, and the stronger elites can learn the first 20. That Tyson just learned the first 20, but he's only comprehended the 13th form. It'll be a long time before he can fully comprehend the 20th, Tianming explained with a good temper. Lu Yin remembered that Roz had learned 5 forms, Munor had probably learned 10, and Tyson had more or less 13. He himself had learned 7 from Munor, making a total of 108 forms. Hall Master Tianming, how much have you learned? Bai Shui suddenly asked. Everyone looked at Tianming. Lu Yin was curious as well. Tianming's casual display of the Sky Beast Claw had far surpassed Tyson's. Someone who could become a Hall Master and intimidate someone like Tyson was definitely not simple. Tianming smiled faintly. 43 forms. Lu Yin and the others' expressions changed. This was close to half of the Hall Master's level. No wonder he was so much better than Tyson and the others. Actually, of the 5 Hall Masters, Lok Khan has learned the most. 49 forms are the strongest of our Sky Beast Claw, Tianming said. What do I have to do if I want to learn all of the Sky Beast Claw? Tianming shrugged. Defeat one of us and become a Hall Master. You'll be able to enjoy all of Yu Academy's resources. He then waved his hand. I still have matters to attend to, so I'll be leaving. Good luck, everyone. By the way, those who have remolded will have to join Yu Academy. If you don't have a choice, you can join me, I'll take good care of you. We've already been booked by the 13 Imperial Squadrons, can we still join Yu Academy? Bai Shui asked. Tianming smiled. The 13 Imperial Squadrons don't clash with Yu Academy. Yu Academy is a place to learn, while the 13 Imperial Squadrons are a place to fight. Zhang Dingtian's growl also disappeared at this point, and Bai Shui stepped into the formcast pool not long after. It didn't take long for Bai Shui to start moaning in pain as well, her voice much more pleasant than Zhang Dingtian's. Bronson, who's reshaping their bodies. Is it a man or a woman? Bronson answered, No one, they're doing it themselves. Lu Yin nodded. If it had been a man sculpting Bai Shue's body, he would have been pissed. Although Bai Shue wasn't his woman, he didn't want her to be taken advantage of by someone else. By the way, Surizen, which squad took a liking to you? He asked as he thought of the monk. Surizen slowly raised his head, his voice raspy. Zhang Dingnan the 5th. Bai Shue the 6th. I'll join the 11th. Lu Yin muttered to himself. Bronson had introduced the 5th squad's captain to Hu Qingshan, the head of the Hu family in the Great Yu Empire. He was also Hu Xiaoling's father, the red-haired middle-aged man in the court. The 6th squad's captain was Peach, the lowly. The 11th squad's captain was the bald, blind monk. It was normal for Hu Qingshan to take a liking to Zhang Dingtian, who was a realm breaker and could join the 13 imperial squadrons. It was also normal for Surizen to be chosen by the bald, blind monk. Sigmund had said that Surizen's perseverance had attracted some people's interest, so it should have been the blind monk. But why had Bai Shue been chosen by Peach? That lowly had left a deep impression on him. Forget it, it had nothing to do with him. Since they'd left Earth, their fates were in their own hands. It was a pity that the Astral Combat Academy was about to reach the Frostwave Weave. Zhang Dingtian and the others would have to cultivate again after remolding, so they wouldn't be able to make it in time. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 79. Lu Yin bid farewell to Surizen and returned to Xinyu Star with Zhou Xian and Bronson. Everyone had their own destiny, and Lu Yin had no right or ability to interfere. Whether or not they could cross paths in the future was up to them. The three returned to Xinyu Star that very night and saw King Zishan's residence not far from the palace. It was at this moment that Lu Yin understood why the officials had been so against him entering the palace. The most majestic building on Xinyu Star was the palace, and no other building could compare to it in terms of height. King Zishan's residence was second only to the palace. Back then His Majesty and King Zishan became sworn brothers. After inheriting the throne, King Zishan's residence was elevated to become a landmark second only to the palace. Even though the Zishan family has disappeared, the residence remains and no one is allowed to enter. Lu Yin took a deep breath. Let's go inside. The capital star was extremely prosperous, and even at night it was as bright as day under the countless lights. For many, the nightlife had just begun. On a mountain range not too far from the palace, dozens of spacecraft were idling, surrounded by countless people cheering. Raz, raz, raz. Hundreds and thousands of people shouted, drowning out the mountainside. Raz was pleased and glanced at the man nearby. This is the last round, Wu Kai. You've lost, so you'll have to kneel when you see me in the future. Wu Kai gritted his teeth. I won't lose. Don't forget your promise. Raz was disdainful. When have you ever beaten me? But I'll keep my promise. If you win, I'll ask my father to plead for General Sigmund, but that's impossible, huh? The crowd cheered even louder. Elsewhere in a huge manor, Hu Shaoling was being led around by a little girl. Sis, you promised Xiao that you'd take him out to play. You can't go back on your word. Hu Shaoling smiled bitterly. Yes, Xiao. I won't lie to you. Let me go first. The little girl pouted. No, you lied to me like that last time. I can't catch up to you. Hu Shaoling sighed. She suddenly smiled slyly. Xiao's helping you. Helping me? Hu Shaoling was confused. The girl giggled. Those idiots from Fire's Melt Planet keep pestering father to marry you. Let's take this chance to slip away. Hu Shaoling rolled her eyes. Don't even think about it, little girl. Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? Stupid. The little girl pouted angrily. On the other side, in a noisy bar, a group of people were singing and dancing to their heart's content. A woman wearing revealing clothes and black leather boots was shouting excitedly. She would occasionally gulp down alcohol and shout loudly. Outside the bar, a young man walked in and sat in front of the bar counter gloomily. Give me a glass of hard liquor. Soon a cup of dark green liquor appeared. The man took a big gulp and choked, coughing violently. The man's embarrassment caused many people to laugh at him, especially the woman in revealing clothes. She pointed at his nose and laughed. The man was furious. Shut up, you bunch of maggots. For a moment the bar was silent. Everyone stared at the man in a daze. Their gazes were not filled with anger, but with sympathy and a trace of admiration. The man felt that something was wrong, but he did not care. He was the strongest person in the Imperial Military Academy, Ian. In terms of status, he was far above these trash who only knew how to hang out in nightclubs. The woman in revealing clothes slowly walked to Ian's side and narrowed her eyes, revealing her beautiful shoulders. She suddenly grabbed Ian's shoulder and leaned over. "Little brother, were you talking about me just now?" Ian frowned as he smelled the woman's alluring scent. He was a little impulsive, but the thought of her hanging out in nightclubs made him lose his appetite. "Get lost." The woman laughed loudly, and in an instant the entire bar was flooded with laughter. Everyone was laughing, including the bartender. Ian was confused. What was going on? "Miss Dana, someone's insulting you. Someone in the Imperial capital actually dares to insult you. This is worth celebrating. Let's drink to the word, maggot." "Cheers." Everyone shouted. The bar became inexplicably excited. Ian was even more confused. Were these people crazy? How could they be so happy after being insulted? The woman called Dana was also very happy and kept slapping the bar counter. "Interesting. How many years has it been since someone dared to insult me? Today's bill is on me." "Thank you, Miss Dana." Everyone raised their glasses in celebration. Ian was furious. Enough. Suddenly, a suffocating force descended upon him, causing cracks to appear on the bar counter. Ian's gadget shattered and his breathing stopped. He stared at Dana in disbelief. This pressure was coming from her. The others didn't react, and only Ian felt it. He couldn't understand what level of strength this was. Was it a melder? A Lameder? Or an explorer? Dana leaned closer to Ian. "Little brother, do you know who I am?" Ian's mouth was bleeding, and he knew that he had offended someone incredible. "No, I don't." Dana's lips curled up and she licked her lips in an extremely seductive manner. "I'm the daughter of the captain of the Bladestorm mercenaries, Chijin." Ian was confused at first, but then his expression changed. Everyone knew about the Bladestorm mercenaries, and even the upper echelons of the Great Yu Empire knew about them. The mercenaries themselves weren't anything special, but their vice-captain was the captain of the 13 Imperial squadrons, Shalash. At that moment, Ian felt as if his entire world had collapsed. He had caused trouble by insulting the daughter of the captain of the Bladestorm mercenaries. Many things could happen at night, and many things could only happen at night. Zenustar's nightlife was very rich, and there were many nobles, powerhouses, thrill-seekers, fugitives, and so on. Countless people would appear at night, making the capital resplendent. However, amidst this brilliance, there was a trace of darkness that could never be illuminated. This was the darkness that covered King Zishan's palace. King Zishan's palace was extremely vast, and its height was second only to the imperial palace. Its shadow was always shrouded in darkness, and it had been like this for hundreds of years. But at this moment that darkness was illuminated. Lu Yin stepped into King Zishan's palace and immediately lit it up as bright as day. Not only did he illuminate the palace, but he also illuminated the only dark place in the capital. Everyone simultaneously looked up at King Zishan's palace, and the darkness that had been there for hundreds of years was finally illuminated. Amidst the mountains, the aircraft competition began. The instant King Zishan's palace lit up, everyone looked up. Only Wuxia Mathers didn't care. He only hoped to win this competition so that Sicker could speak up for his father in court. At this moment, even the burning of the imperial palace wouldn't be able to distract him. Raz cursed, his attention drawn to King Zishan's palace. By the time he reacted, Wuxia Mathers had already disappeared. He had lost this round. In the Hua family, Hua Xiaoling was just about to take Hua Xiaoxiao out when she saw King Zishan's palace light up. She was shocked, and the image of a man and the dagger that had been pressed against her neck appeared in her mind. Buin. The bar was originally under the shadow of King Zishan's palace, and the moment it lit up, everyone inside could clearly feel it. Everyone walked out and stared at the tall building not far away in shock. Isn't that King Zishan's palace? It's actually lit up. Did a descendant of the Zishan family appear? I heard that he did. It's a young man who was given the title of King Zishan by His Majesty. Ian stared blankly as Lu Yin's figure appeared in his mind. That person had easily robbed him, causing him to be ridiculed by everyone in the Imperial Military Academy. He was ridiculed as the weakest student in history, that bastard King Zishan. If not for him, he wouldn't have ended up in such a miserable state. He wouldn't have come to the bar to get drunk, and he definitely wouldn't have offended the Bladestorm mercenaries. That despicable bastard. Little brother, how should we deal with you for insulting me? Dana ignored King Zishan's palace and stared at Ian with interest. Ian lowered his head and didn't say a word. Dana sneered, "From today onwards, you will join the Bladestorm mercenaries and serve me. You will wash my clothes and cook my meals as an apology." Ian opened his mouth to refuse, but in the face of her threats, he had no choice but to agree. He wouldn't be able to return to the academy anyway, and that place would only be filled with mockery. Within the palace, the undying Yushan looked at King Zishan's palace in the distance with a nostalgic expression. "Old brother, if you were still alive, I would have followed you into the Innerverse again and brought the great Yu Empire along." The reopening of King Zishan's palace had caused some to rejoice, some to worry, some to reminisce, and some to be angry. None of this had anything to do with Lu Yin at the moment, as he was focused on his gadget. A stranger was trying to contact him. Welcome aboard. Stay tuned and subscribe to Han Li's Wuxia Adventures for more thrilling content. Chapter 80. Bronson was arranged to stay in the outer courtyard, but Lu Yin couldn't let him get close to him. He had too many secrets, and so did Zhou Xian. Lu Yin tapped on the screen and saw a familiar figure appear. "Hello, student." Lu Yin hadn't expected Silver to contact him. "How do you know my gadget number?" Silver smiled. "I can find it if I want to." "What do you want?" Lu Yin asked indifferently. Silver beamed. "I haven't seen you in a while and I missed you. Here's a gift for you." "A gift?" Lu Yin was confused. Silver sent a location to Lu Yin's gadget. "There are a few corpse kings hidden here, you might be able to use them." Lu Yin's gaze turned sharp. "So you're related to the Neo-Human Alliance. Baruda's betrayal was your doing, right? You assassinated Zhang Dingtian on Earth because of the zombie wave, and you took those corpse kings with you, right?" Silver picked his ear. "Don't be so loud, people will hear you. I'm not from the Neo-Human Alliance, I just happen to know about this. Don't push everything onto me." Lu Yin's eyes flashed. "What are you trying to do by telling me the location?" "I already said that I'll help you. And I also said that even if you help me, I won't repay you in the future." "Ah, how heartless. Since that's the case, I'll be a good person and do you a favor," Silver laughed. Lu Yin stared at him. "Destroying the Neo-Human Alliance is everyone's duty. I know the location and I'll definitely take care of it. Don't even think about escaping, I've already got my eyes on you. Once I find your location, I'll capture you and send you to the 13 Imperial Squadrons." Silver's lips curled up. "That'll depend on your ability. Goodbye, student." With that, the screen disappeared. Lu Yin looked up at the sky. The Neo-Human Alliance was a huge organization that dominated the Innerverse and Outerverse. What was Silver's role in it? Why was he helping him? Was it because of his status as King Zishan? It seemed like his status as King Zishan was more useful than he had imagined. His family had made him King Zishan, and the Neo-Human Alliance had also approached him because of his status. The Great Yu Empire was just a power in Frostwave Weave, so how could King Zishan be so attractive? There were only two things he needed to do right now. The first was to enter the Great Yu Empire's Youth Council, and the second was to join Astral 10. As for King Zishan, that would have to wait. Looking around the outer courtyard, he turned off the lights in his room and rubbed his hands together. It was time to roll his dice. This moment was always worth looking forward to, and he didn't know what he would get. Now that he had 70 cubes of star crystals, he had never been so rich before. It was enough for him to roll 70 times, but unfortunately he could only roll it 5 times at most. 4 rolls was just right, but if he wanted to roll it again, he'd have to rest for a while, and if he didn't rest long enough, then he'd have to use up all his star crystals. "Come on, it's time to test my luck," he muttered to himself. At this moment he was like a gambler. He opened his palm and the die appeared. It wasn't dull but rather sparkled with a hazy starlight. Lu Yin smacked his forehead as he had forgotten that the die could recover on its own even without star crystals. However, it would take a long time to recover, and the time he had spent on the trip from Earth to Zenustar was more than enough for it to recover. Unfortunately, he should have rolled the die if he had known. Looking at the die, Lu Yin tapped it, and when it gradually stopped spinning, a 2 appeared in front of him. 2, not bad, Lu Yin muttered to himself as he looked at the disintegration vortex. He took out a number of items from his cosmic ring and threw them inside, including a few cosmic rings. Lu Yin didn't recognize the materials that came out of the vortex, but these weren't the only materials that had been disintegrated. They would be thrown in again until they couldn't be disintegrated anymore. This time the only material that he recognized was the essence of ancient gold. He had gotten 2 grains this time, and with the one from last time he now had 3 in total. It wasn't much, but it wasn't bad since it was quite expensive. Aside from the essence, there were also a bunch of other materials that he didn't recognize, but they should be decent. 5 minutes passed quickly, and Lu Yin had obtained quite a number of materials. There were many types, but they were few in number, but they were all good stuff. He took out a cube of star crystals and the die quickly recovered. Lu Yin tapped it and the die spun rapidly until it finally stopped at 5. When he saw 5, Lu Yin subconsciously wanted to rush out of the door. Roll 5 was an innate gift, and he had to come into contact with a cultivator within 10 seconds to borrow their innate gift. But then he stopped himself. Who could he borrow from? Lu Yin blinked, but he couldn't seem to find any cultivators with innate gifts. There were definitely cultivators with innate gifts on the capital star, but he didn't know any of them. His mouth twitched. 10 seconds had passed quickly and he'd wasted it. Wait, wasn't that Zhou Xian? Lu Yin was speechless. How could he have forgotten about him? Sighing, he decided to just let it go. He took out another star crystal, and when the die stopped spinning for the 3rd time, a 6 appeared in front of him. Before he could celebrate, a terrifying suction force came from the die, and the star energy in his body was instantly sucked away. At the same time, the star crystals in his cosmic ring were quickly absorbed as well. He didn't even need to crush them. They were turned into star energy and disappeared into the die. A spatial crack appeared in front of Lu Yin, but it didn't last for more than a second before disappearing. Everything returned to normal. Lu Yin gasped for breath. What was going on? Looking at the dim die, he was confused. He'd clearly gotten a 6. But why hadn't there been any reaction? The star energy in his body had also disappeared. He suddenly thought of something and hurriedly checked his cosmic ring, only to find that all the star crystals had disappeared. This can't be, this is robbery, Lu Yin said bitterly. There were 6 pips on the die, 3 of which were unknown. The other 4 were fine, but the 6th required a terrifying amount of star energy. He had about 70 cubes of star energy in his body, but he could only open a crack. Furthermore, he couldn't even figure out what it was for. It was too disgusting. Lu Yin suddenly had a bad feeling. Would this happen again if he got a 6 in the future? Did the 6 pips draw out all his star energy? That was impossible. Every pip had a purpose, but the 6th pip's purpose was too terrifying and he couldn't handle it right now. Looking at the dim die, Lu Yin sighed. It was all over today. All the star energy in his body had been drained, and he could only slowly recover. What a scam. Now that he was back to square one, Lu Yin wasn't even in the mood to cultivate. He fell asleep as soon as he hit the ground, his original plan firming. That night, many people couldn't sleep as they stared at the glowing Zishan Palace, deep in thought. The next day, Lu Yin woke up and contacted Zhang Dingtian and the other 2, learning that they were at Yu Academy and would be reporting to the 13 Imperial squadrons in a few days. Lu Yin chatted with them for a bit but didn't say anything more. Boss, someone wants to see you, Zhou Xian shouted outside Lu Yin's room. Lu Yin walked out. Who is it? It's an officer with a rather high position. He says he's a lieutenant and his name is Long Chu. Lu Yin had Zhou Xian bring him to the guest hall. Not long after, a middle-aged man with a dignified appearance stepped into the hall. His eyes lit up when he saw Lu Yin and he immediately bowed. Lieutenant Long Chu of the 3rd Ring greets King Zishan. Lu Yin helped Long Chu up. There's no need for that, Lieutenant. Please take a seat. Long Chu was moved. King Zishan, we've been waiting for you to return. Lu Yin's eyes flashed and he had Zhou Xian leave. He looked at Long Chu. What do you mean, Lieutenant Long? Long Chu opened his mouth to speak but he subconsciously looked around. Lu Yin smiled. Bronson isn't here. Long Chu heaved a sigh of relief and whispered, I used to be a soldier under the undying Zishan. Many of us used to follow him, but ever since the Zishan family disappeared, we were all sent to the third ring. We thought we'd never see anyone from the Zishan family again, but now you're here. This is great. The third ring? Lu Yin was puzzled. Long Chu nodded bitterly. The Zishan family disappeared, and most of the soldiers who used to follow them were sent to the third ring. On the surface, the third ring is the capital's defense force, but in reality, it's just a place for the rich and powerful. Elders like us were thrown there like trash. It's torture. We're soldiers and we don't want to suffer such humiliation. Lu Yin didn't say anything. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.